Ladies and gentlemen, there is no better way than to spend the weekend and Friday night here with us on Sportswire Radio and also Roku with the Northeast Streaming Sports Channel and, of course, Tobacco Road Sports Radio, where you can catch us 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow. And we'll be on Roku with the Northeast Streaming Sports Channel at 8 p.m. And if you're catching us here live, we are on now Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Yes, I do have a LinkedIn account where we go live on. We're with three of my favorite guys from Sportswire Radio. That is esteemed author and, of course, the co-host of the Talking Rivals Show, Mr. Patrick Trotty. Also of the Talking Rivals Show and the Lift Off Jets, that is Chris Pizzea, and, of course, the legendary Brute Force Brad Weiss of the SJC Long Island Golden Eagles men's basketball program. Also the head coach for our Plainview JFK Hawks boys JV team, also with the LI Brew Crew and Level Up in the Long Island Nets. And a special guest, a very good friend of the show, a pretty good player in his own right, and that is Jason Getz, who almost looks like one of the players from the Yeshiva team. I was trying to figure out if he looks like either Etan Halpert or maybe Gabe Leifer or maybe Ryan Terrell. Maybe he'll play as good as them one day, but obviously, guys, how we doing tonight?
I'm good.
We're doing great, Tom.
All right. Well, I'm happy everybody's doing great here. It's obviously been a very, very busy day on Sportswire Radio, and I could not think of a better way than to continue to start the conversation here with you guys. And I want to get into it when it comes to first, but the MLB and the Major League Baseball lack of season here. It looked like Monday we were going to have a deal, but it looks like now we could be out in the cold, no pun intended, for a while. So I want to get the Talking Rivals guys' thoughts on it first, then we'll get to the Brute Force and Jason. So for you guys, I'll start with Patrick. I mean, it looked like Monday we were going to have a deal going into Tuesday afternoon, and now it looks like players want to be played for a full season and who knows what, and we're invoking labor rights and everything else in between. And give me your thoughts, Patrick, since we last spoke, on where we stand in terms of Major League Baseball and the owners themselves in terms of a season here for 2022.
Yeah, Monday, they had me. They hooked me. They had me reeling in, refreshing on Twitter, refreshing my feed until I think it was 3 a.m.
I saw you on Twitter about like 2:40 a.m. It was like, wow, somebody's up actually from
MLB Network and Twitter and Facebook and everything, and then nothing. They went from you almost had a deal to maybe working backwards and losing ground. And I really think that it was the MLBPA releasing stuff to the PR and to the reporters, kind of making it save face to make it look like they were gaining some traction so that they can just blame it on the players when it falls through. Because the last negotiation was, it wasn't in good faith, I don't think, because the MLBPA added some stuff in the fine print at the last minute and said, yeah, let's just sign this. This is the deal we were talking about. And then one of the players, I think it was Ross Stripling, said there was stuff in there that they hadn't agreed to or talked about that they slipped in at like midnight, which is, I mean, how can you trust them after that? So I could see why it went south, but and there's back and forth. These guys going back and forth. Can they just get on a cell phone and just text the response over? Because they were going back and forth between meeting rooms. And you think they could get in the same room at least?
It's 2022, right? I mean, it's almost laughable.
I was waiting for like a fax machine or something.
How about the payphones? I mean, is the payphone still around these days? I remember still using the payphones. I mean, maybe they could have used the payphone, right? Are they still around?
I think they would have ran out of quarters after a while. They were on like 12 meetings. But it's sad though, because there's all this talk about on the field stuff that needs to be fixed, but you need to get on the field first to fix it. You need to have the product.
Absolutely.
So just figure out the economics, meet in the middle, and then work on the pace of play and whatnot. But I guess nothing for a while now.
I always thought that's the whole goal of any deal. You're a negotiating table. You go meet halfway, and I guess it could be a while. I mean, Chris, when I heard Patrick talk about midnight here, it almost made me think of the Midnight Massacre when the Mets had traded Tom Seaver, and it's almost maybe this is worse in a sense because at least there was baseball in 1977, and who knows when we'll have some baseball. And we have Billy McInerney, who's joined us, of course, formerly of Elite Sports, and he was checking in obviously after the Rangers game, so we'll get to Billy in a few minutes. But Chris, I mean, what's going on here between players and owners, and where do we stand?
You know what? I think a part of the problem is the from the owner's side, they have most of the smaller market and middle market owners have the voice, and they don't want to spend money, right? As we could see, their payrolls are usually middle to very low all the time. So you got Colorado and Detroit, and
the Indians. You've got
right.
Tampa. You've got Oakland.
Yeah.
I mean,
and they're the ones that have the biggest voice, which to me makes no sense. I know they're the majority, but they shouldn't have, the voice here. Because if it was up to the, the higher market guys, there would be no CBT, which to me the CBT is basically a salary cap without calling it a salary cap. So if there's going to be a salary cap, I've been talking about it with Patrick for the past few weeks. I've been saying they need to have just a hard cap with a ceiling and a floor.
You said I think the last two Talking Rivals show, if I'm not mistaken, the last two of them.
Exactly. Put a floor in so you could force those lower market clubs to actually spend money, even if it's $80 million or $90 million, whatever they agree on. Yeah, the cap is going to hurt, and I know the players aren't going to like that, but you know what? Teams don't want to go over the CBT anyway because they don't want to lose money. Because take the Yankees, for example. Everybody calls Hal Steinbrenner cheap. I don't know how Yankee fans can call this cheap. He spends about $200 million a year on payroll and has paid the most taxes of any team, but that's a whole other story. But he's paying a tax, whatever that tax is, and that money goes to the lower market clubs. Now, that is supposed to go into the club to spend more money on payroll, and it's not. They're just pocketing it. So you can't blame a big market club for saying, you know what, I don't want to do that. I don't want to give these guys my money, and they're not even going to use it to make their teams better. So the heck with them. So I get it. So then just put a regular hard cap up there like every other, league has, and just do it. But I'm sure they're not going to do it. But I think there's got to be some kind of movement. And I think to make any kind of agreement, both sides got to move, right? The owners or whatever, they got to come closer somehow. It can't be one side saying, okay, we'll give you everything, let's move on. There's got to be movement on both sides, and that's what I want to see. I don't want to see, like the owners, whatever. Just be right down the middle, meet in the middle here and figure this out. Get baseball going, because it's not just the players that are affected. How about all the people that work for?
How about all the people that 80+ games a year, the ushers, and the people that work in terms of putting the field together, and security and staff and all those different people that they depend on it. It's basically a paycheck. It's an income for them. It's a way of living. I mean, listen, if you're a millionaire, you know what? I could sit out for the next 20 years, right? I mean, because I have millions of dollars. But if I'm sitting there and I'm these poor people that are dependent on this, they're 80 to 90 dates here that are in that ballpark, and right now they don't know what's going to happen. I mean, those are the people that we feel for most. And the brute force Brad Weiss is with us, and of course with Jason Getz, a pretty good player in his own right. And obviously, Jason, we've heard from you on YouTube a couple of times, and I'm curious because you guys are athletes currently, and the brute force you just played recently as well. I mean, what do you make of this whole situation? Because from the athlete side of it, and I'll get to Billy in a second, I mean, what do you do here? I mean, how do you keep yourself in condition? I feel like, Brad, I asked you this question in 2020, and I feel like now I'm resigned to the fact I'm asking you this question again, and I'll ask Jason his thoughts on it. I mean, what do you make of this? And if you're a player, what do you do here in terms of a season?
Yeah, well, talking about this as a whole, it's just ridiculous. I mean, and it's funny that the guy I was talking to yesterday about this, Tom Bryce, was John Gonzalez, who I know is tuning in. So
yes, he DM'd me a couple of times. Yeah,
I knew something was up. John Gonzalez and I were talking, and we're talking. We're on the same page. It's very rare, me and John Gonzalez. So certainly we're both fed up with this. I mean, as a fan of baseball, it's just absolutely disgusting that we have to go through all these different negotiations and not come up with a solution. I mean, and now what are we doing as baseball fans? I mean, we're all thinking about what's going to happen. And, Patrick and Chris both made great points. But in the end, I mean, we're talking about millionaires, billionaires, and they can't get themselves together. And again, I talked about it last week with, the highlight of baseball being Max Scherzer pulling up to the parking lot in his Porsche And all I see is the same video every day.
I got messages about that, by the way. You in the car comment. I mean, I got some messages about that.
I mean, that's what we see every day with no change. It's the same thing every day. Oh, here comes Scherzer back to the parking lot again. And then the next day, oh, here comes Scherzer. And then we hear, and Patrick said it, we heard the rumors. We heard, the type of things, where we got optimistic. I'll be honest with you, Tom Bryson. I said it last week. I'm going to say it again. I was not optimistic this whole time. I knew there were too many hurdles that had to be taken over. We heard that there were certain things that were getting better. We talked about, the number of playoff teams that they had gotten a solution with. They had a few other things that they got a solution with, but they didn't get enough in to be able to get a season ready for opening day. So ultimately, Tom, it's embarrassing. It's disgusting. And John Gonzalez, like he said, we're on the same page on this one. And that's scary for any topic. All right, if we're on the same page, that means something is wrong. And there clearly is something wrong with baseball right now because we cannot see it. We can't even see spring training. We're going to see summer training. And we might, at this point, not see summer training at this point. We might not see any baseball anytime soon.
That was funny, Brad, before I get to Jason and Billy, that we coined the phrase summer training on the podcast 2 years ago. We were a podcast, and now it looks like I'm going to have to go back and bring that out with summer training. I mean, listen, that's a scary thought here. I mean, Jason, what do you make of this whole situation with Major League Baseball? I mean, what do you think happens?
I don't know. It's not looking good for them. I think the players are annoyed. If I was a player, I'd be annoyed. I'm a baseball player myself. I pitch. And getting ready for the season, you got to take constant repetitions. Your arm care is very important. And not doing that in a professional way could be detrimental to the player.
So what do you do then? I mean, is there a way that, you're a pitcher, so this is an interesting point that you make. I mean, it's different, let's say Brad, obviously, and him playing basketball, but you as a baseball player, as a pitcher especially, I mean, what do you do then to keep yourself ready? I mean, it certainly as a pitcher, you're in a much more delicate position than, let's say, somebody who's a position player. I mean, talk to us about that, and what do you do?
I mean, there's a lot of stuff that goes into being a pitcher. You got to prep mentally, physically. Like right now, waiting for the Clark season, I'm taking lessons. I'm throwing bullpens. I mean, I'm assuming the players have access to it, but it's not through the MLB right now.
Right.
Like they could hurt team chemistry. You're probably not going with the same catcher every day. So
can you replicate that in any way? I mean, is there a way to, I know it's kind of difficult, but from your vantage point, because you're out there practicing, you're yourself getting ready for a season that's going to start in a couple of weeks here as the weather's now starting to turn a little bit. I mean, is there a way at all in any way to replicate that, Jason, in your opinion?
You could, but it's going to come out of the players' pockets.
Well, I wouldn't feel too sorry for the players.
Well, yeah.
I'm sure they can come up with it. Before I get to Billy, it won't be, for example, we had on at one time a guy, Mike Taverna, who is a famous wrestler, but he's also a coach over at Kingsborough Community College. And one of the lines he had used to me during COVID at the very beginning was, well, you kind of made a makeshift gyms in your basements. You took weights and took bags and you tied them up with water and you did all these different things to keep you in that condition. Now, I don't think the players are going to have to resort to those tactics, but certainly for our pitchers, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I think it's also why owners have been hard set on the fact that they want 4 weeks, whether it's spring training, summer training, whatever it is, because what if these pitchers do, God forbid, get hurt? And Billy, obviously, always good to have you. I mean, what do you make of this situation here? I mean, Monday, it looked like everything was going to be going like a season was going to be on the way, and now we're talking about summer training, maybe even. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously incredibly disappointing. The entire process from the lockout to the fact that it took a month and a half to get negotiations, even anything resembling negotiations started. I think Chris hit it right in the head that, the CBT is an issue. I'm actually going to retire the phrase CBT because it stands for competitive balance tax, and it doesn't do anything to balance out competitiveness. Steve Cohen is paying Max Scherzer more than 3 teams are paying their entire payroll this season.
Just
so it's
3?
not competitive balance tax. It's a luxury tax. Let's call it what it is. I mean, this was put into place to stop the big market teams from blowing away the small market teams.
Sure.
The top 3 spending teams this year, according to Spotrac, are the Mets, the Dodgers, and Yankees, all topping $211 million. Bottom 3 are the Pirates, the Braves, and the Guardians, all under $35 million. So clearly this is not working as designed. Frankly, I don't think there's any reason for it because all that's happening is the money's going from the big market teams to the small market owners' pockets rather than back into those teams. So I think that entire system's a joke, but they're not going to get rid of that because it does somewhat keep spending down. I get it. I think Chris is right. I think small markets. I don't think Steve Cohen cares what the CBT is. I don't think that Dodgers ownership group cares what the luxury tax number is. The Dodgers ownership has routinely gone over it. The Mets, this is the first time they've gone over, but it's only Steve Cohen's second season and really his first full off season because it took a while for the deal to get finalized last year.
Yep.
I think there are some other teams that would happily. I think there are some teams that you do see the competitive balance tax coming into effect. I think the Yankees and Red Sox, you kind of see it happen a lot where they'll kind of go above it, then come back down. They don't want to.
St. Louis, I think, is another team you throw out there.
Yeah,
on the fringe, another team.
So I think that there are teams that definitely treat it like a salary cap, and that's not what it's supposed to be. It's not what it was agreed upon. And the fact that everyone knows that, and the owners tried to increase penalties for going over it, I think is just laughable. At that point, just call it a salary cap, institute a salary floor, tell the Orioles, hey, you need to spend more than $20 million on your team. And, let's actually have some competitiveness in baseball. If you're not going to do that, then don't have this half measure luxury tax CBT crap. It doesn't do anything except keep spending down and cause Mookie Betts to get traded because they don't want to have to pay a tax on his salary.
I find it hard to fathom. And again, I don't want to sound arrogant or cocky or in any way, shape, or form with that, but I find it hard to fathom that there are teams that wouldn't even spend $30 or $40 million on a payroll in this day and age. Go ahead, Billy.
There's 4 teams spending lower than the NHL salary floor. Do you know how bad the NHL's money situation is? How terrible their salary cap is? How restricted their cap is? You have 4 teams spending too little to play in the NHL right now. That is ridiculous. For a league that wants to be the biggest league in America, that wants to be America's pastime, that's pathetic. It's a joke.
You know what I find most, and I want to get to Patrick in a second, is that I remember, we had to get the Expos out, right? Because the Expos didn't spend any money for all those years in the late 90s and the early 2000s. But now we've got 4 teams that, frankly, in like 1998 and 99 US dollars now are spending less than what the Expos spent. That to me is hard to fathom that you would own a sports team. Take a step back. If you would own a sports team, and you would only spend, I don't know, not even barely $1 million a player in this day and age. If you're supposed to be a billionaire to own a professional sports team, that is hard to fathom. And I'm not trying to take the side of the players. I'm not trying to take the side of the owners. I'm trying to take the side of the person that's looking at this and sort of trying to be as balanced as possible. And that's a disgrace. Patrick, again, there's a lot of problems that Major League Baseball has. Certainly we want to get them on the field. But, it just seems to me, is there any way that you think that we can get these guys to maybe sit down and hammer this out here? Because soon the next threat's going to be they're going to suspend the next 2 series. So right now we're missing 6 games. I'm sure within the next week it's going to be another 6 games. And Rob Manfred, again, and we'll get to him, I'm sure, but it's going to be every week 6 games we're going to be suspending to a point where when does it stop?
Billy makes some really good points. I think Chris has said it before. I'll say it again. There needs to be a salary floor. I've come around to that idea. There has to be a minimum, whatever you want to set it at to start and maybe escalate it over the coming years. But, just adjusting for inflation, the Expos money in the late 90s to now, it's gone backwards. It's gone.
That's exactly my point. I can't fathom that. I cannot fathom the fact that there are teams.
The Orioles are more invested in moving the outfield wall back 20 feet.
Right.
Actually spending money on
more money for that than their payroll.
You could spend less money on pitching,
right,
and then don't have to worry about the outfield wall. But they're doing it the other way, and it's just I don't get it with the Guardians or whatever they want to be called. I'm just going to keep calling them the Indians because they're spending like the Indians. They're just cheap. And until they start spending money, they're not the Guardians.
You're saying all Indians are cheap.
They're the CBT, the Cleveland baseball team. That's the new season.
Hey, that's a good one. That's for you, Brad. That's for you, Brad.
But I mean, there's got to be a floor. There's got to be. Look, if you're worth $1 billion, you got to be spending more than the league minimum on players.
I would think every owner that owns a team in all the major sports has to be a billionaire, or at least close to it. So
Yeah.
I can't fathom, and I was hearing this all throughout the week on Talk Radio, and some of our shows here, like the Talking Rivals and the Pinstripe Chronicles guys who've been on with us a couple different times, and the fact that, I mean, you're not making any money really as an owner. So to me, at the end of the day, why not just spend the money if you know that this is sort of a write-off for it? I mean, I just don't get it. To me, the whole thing is twisted, to say the least. I mean, Chris, I mean, is there anything that we can do to be optimistic and say, hey, maybe these guys will get in the room together, or are we going to be in another week from now talking about 2 more series that are going to be canceled?
I don't know. I mean, I would hope so. Today, I think we heard that the players would be willing to listen on a 14 team playoff instead of the 12 that they were okay with. So maybe that's going to kind of get them back into, all right, if we, excuse me, if we're okay with the 14 teams, then you're going to have to bring up that CBT amount from the 220, I think, where they're at. They want to get to 230 or whatever the number is.
That's where they seem to be the farthest apart right now.
Yeah, so maybe that'll get them going. But I mean, if you look at their payrolls, half of the payroll in half of the teams' payrolls are under $100 million for the season. So I mean, if you bring it up to say 85 or 90, the floor that we're talking about, that would bring up a good amount of money into the league, and I think that's a good idea. But I think the players don't want the hard cap, because then it's going to cap the Yankees, the Mets, the Red Sox, or the Dodgers from going, crazy like the Mets are going this year with how much they're, raising their payroll. So something's got to get done. And they have to be, I mean, it's not just us. They have to be, the players and the owners got to be looking at, especially the players, have to be looking at that CBT and saying, okay, this is not working right. It's not fair for anybody. It's not fair for the players. It's not fair for the owners. Let's figure this out. Let's, maybe start thinking about the hard cap, floor, and ceiling. Maybe the players should say, listen, we'll be okay with a cap, but you got to put a floor that's pretty high up. Make it start at $90 million, because that's the only way you're going to make those lower guys, come up. And you know what? If they can't afford $90 million in payroll, then you know what? They shouldn't be owners of a major league.
Exactly my point.
Right?
Because
there's a reason why I don't drive a Porsche. Okay, because I cannot afford a Porsche, so I have to drive a Hyundai. Okay, that's the way it goes. Until I can save up and buy a Porsche, I'm gonna have to drive a Hyundai. So the owners that say, "Well, we can't afford 90," then you know what? You shouldn't own a Major League Baseball franchise. Maybe you have to go to soccer or something. I don't know. Whatever's cheaper, whatever it may be. But if you can't handle it, time to sell. Make your money.
Well, maybe they can own the SJC Long Island Golden Eagles men's basketball team, so we can afford to play in the ECAC.
Like
maybe we can afford to play in the ECAC tournament. Oh boy, I'm going to get in so much trouble.
They could not afford the brute force.
That's for sure. And John Gonzalez chimes in here and says, "I don't agree on a 14-team playoff. They keep watering down baseball. They're ruining the game." Yeah, I mean, there is a point that you play 162 games in baseball, right? And then all of a sudden now you're going to have pretty much half of baseball in the postseason. I mean, Brad, you and Jason, Brad, you just played recently, you're coaching. Jason, you're playing obviously multiple sports. I mean, do you guys like that? Do you want more teams in the playoffs? Should there just be everybody at this point in the playoffs like the other sports do? It seems like every sport is moving to that for the obvious reason of the TV revenue.
Yeah, but come on. Everybody makes the play. What is this? What's the regular season about then? We're just playing for pride at this point? Like, what? You got to make it competitive in the regular season. You continue to add more teams to the playoffs, then it's like, we could go 10 games under 500 and still make the damn playoffs. I mean, that's just ridiculous. And I agree. I actually, once again, agree with John Gonzalez where, I don't like 14 teams. That's like you said, half the league is making the playoffs. And And one thing that I think, and you guys know I'm an NBA guy as well, is that this play-in tournament thing, you're looking at the teams that are making the play-in right now, and some of them don't have great records. Like, for example, the Lakers. The Lakers are horrible, and they're going to make a play-in tournament, and they're 10 games under 500. I mean, I don't think teams that are that flagrantly bad deserve to be.
Look at the Nets right now. The Nets are 5-17 the last 22, and they're probably going to be.
No one knows it better than Jason. He's our resident Nets fan. But listen, again, like, they don't deserve to make the playoffs if they're 10 games. And that's what baseball is, doing. And obviously, again, we know the reasons, why they're doing it. It's obviously for the money, for the TVs, like you said. And again, I just don't agree with it because I think it hurts the game of baseball. And listen, we'll get to Rob. I'll wait my comments to Rob Manfred because he's already screwed up the game enough. He's already put up bad rules.
He was playing golf the day of the announcement. It's like, what bad optics?
I mean, and we've said it on this show where we just say, he doesn't care enough about his own sport. He doesn't care. He doesn't. It's pretty obvious. And these owners too, and we talk about the owners being cheap, and the owners don't care enough to actually address the issue of Rob Manfred. They think he's the greatest, commissioner ever. Where he's terrible. He's awful. He's all for the sport.
He's doing their work for them. That's why they're happy with him. Because remember, all commissioners, their boss and employer is the owners, whether it's Goodell in the NFL, Silver in the NBA, Bettman in the NHL. So at the end of the day, the owners are happy because Manfred is doing their bidding. So
exactly, and that's a problem. And with the owners, I 100% agree with Chris. If you can't afford it, go somewhere else. All right. Well, you know what? I'd like to bring up a term that I've heard, and they've talked about minorities getting into these type of spots as owners. What about an ownership group? Does it always have to be an individual? Like an ownership group, so maybe the team can afford a little bit more. We need more of that. We need more ownership groups to be able to afford players. If you have one owner, right, that can't do, like Patrick said, the Cleveland Indians shouldn't be the Guardians until they spend some damn money. All right, spend money. Invest in your team because it's the MLB, and in the end, right, you don't invest, you're not going to be that good, and most teams that haven't invested haven't been that great.
And thanks to the crack staff for giving this here before I get to Jason. Here's the teams that currently don't have a payroll under $100 million. We'll give the Brewers as an asterisk because they're just literally under $100 million. But you have Texas, although Texas, I think, will have over $100 million in 2022. They're at just under 96. Then you had Kansas City at 91.5, Arizona at 91, Oakland, surprisingly, at 91. Detroit, but again, they signed Baez, so we know that they'll be over 186. Then, surprisingly, Seattle, a little over 83. Tampa, 70. Miami, 58. Pittsburgh, 54. Cleveland, again, the Indians, Guardians, whatever you want to call them, 50. And then the Baltimore Orioles at 42. So, I mean, that's a travesty about some of these teams here. And John Gonzalez chimes in. What's that?
The only excusable one is Tampa because they have a good team. The rest of the teams suck.
And that was the point that people made on the radio. And John Gonzalez says this lockout is getting boring. Like we went to the NFL draft. We'll get to the NFL in a few minutes for sure, John.
You got to Manfred in first, John. Give us some time.
Yeah, let us at least throw a dig in on Manfred. And there is some NFL news we'll get into. I mean, Jason, anything else you want to throw out there before I get to Rob Manfred and let these guys beat up on him? Anything you want to add, Jason, on Major League Baseball? Anything else?
I'm with Brad on the playoff thing. I don't like the NBA playing games either. I think that
I actually like them though for whatever reason.
I don't know. I think we should just keep it simple. Like, I never like these extra games. I don't know. I like it simple. The best team should make the playoffs. Get all these other teams out of there.
Well, where the NBA screws up though, very quickly before we get to Rob Manfred, is that they don't count winning. Winning your division used to be you were automatically either a 2 seed or a 3 seed, and now it doesn't matter anymore. Winning your division, you throw it out the window. It depends on who had the best overall record. So in one sense, the NBA kind of screwed things up in terms of how they place
I want to make a point to that, Tom, because we have some Yankee fans on this show, and Yankee fans understand that they've been a wild card for a few years now, winning 100 games. And that's just ridiculous. And you have teams that have won divisions with like 88 wins,
So
getting,
the
you know,
Padres back in 2005 were 82-80 and won the NL West. I mean, famously, the Cardinals won the World Series. They were the 83-78 and 06, I believe.
But, you know, the one thing I'm going to give the NBA is that, you know, listen, you should be judged based on how you do in the season, right? If the Yankees have 100 wins and the winner of the AL West has 88, how is the Yankees have to compete in a one-game wild card? And the division winner, out in the AL West gets an automatic series. Like, I think that's ridiculous in baseball, you know. And again, that's not even one of the issues we're going to complain about when we talk about Rob Manfred. But that's something where, you know, if I'm a Yankee fan, we won 100 games, and we might lose in a wild card game, but some team in the AL West,
very quickly, famously, the reason that we do have a wild card, and Patrick and Chris will back me up on this, is famously in the 1993 season, the San Francisco Giants won 103 games and didn't make the playoffs. They had the second best record in baseball. Of course, the Atlanta Braves had caught them. The Giants had a double-digit lead up into August, and the Atlanta Braves, they required Fred McGriff, and all of a sudden, I think they won like 40 of like 49 or 50 games, and they caught the Giants, and that's why we have a wild card, because we wanted to reward those teams who won, again, like the Giants, 103 games. So I could see your point in some sense. I mean, so I understand where you're coming from, and that, listen, if a team does win X amount of games, they should maybe be seated differently. I mean, those are fair things. I mean,
Brute, don't feel too bad for the Yankees.
I don't feel bad for the Yankees.
I don't feel bad. I'm a Mets fan. I don't feel bad for them. But I'm just trying to make the playoffs at this point. And this is just great, Patrick, that the one seed we get Max Scherzer, and we're actually looking like we could make the playoffs, and we can't even play the damn season.
Yeah, that is you guys spent the money, and now for what?
And him spending the money is probably what caused a lot of these issues, if we're being honest.
Well, originally the CBT or the tax was originally put on there to stop the Yankees from spending all that money. I think it was 2003 they started. They were the original reason why this was put there.
Wasn't that the year, I think, Kevin Brown, they got in the offseason was 2003, and Sheffield, I think, also was at the same time? So, those were the years when the Yankees would have like $100 million payroll more than like the second team.
Right, yeah. But you know what? You can feel bad for the Yankees. I'm just letting you guys know. We have not been to a World Series since 2009. So
here we go.
It's been a long time. Very long time.
Well, because we're on Tobacco Road Sports Radio, I'm going to plead the fifth on that, because who knows if there's Yankee fans in North Carolina. So I'm going to certainly try to be as diplomatic as I can here, as we are on Sportswire Radio and also the Northeast Streaming Sports Channel, and as well as Tobacco Road Sports Radio. I want to thank Linda and Mac McGrath. I also want to thank Desmond Johnson. Desmond Johnson, of course, owns Tobacco Road Sports Radio. You can catch us on tobaccoroadsportsradio.com. That is tomorrow at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We're in between usually high school basketball games that are sort of wrapping up their season. So we're kind of like the warm-up or the opening act for that. So I want to appreciate Desmond Johnson for his support. And I am the host of the Sports Report and the station manager here of Sportswire Radio, the Reverend Tom Bryson. John Gonzalez has another comment in here. He says, Brute loves the Guardians. I guess. I mean, well, who really loves the Guardians at this point? I mean, like, if you ask people in Cleveland, I guess we could certainly ask them their opinion and see how that would go. But I do want to touch upon Rob Manfred quickly before I move on to some football in the interest of time, because John Gonzalez does make a point. We could talk about baseball forever, but there is no baseball. And in the interest of time, we do want to talk about some other things that our audience, especially also around the country, might want to hear. And Rob Manfred, I mean, Billy, give me a thought or two on Rob Manfred and why he is arguably one of the worst commissioners in all of sports.
I mean, I don't even know where to begin with this guy at this point. You know, golfing the last day.
Oh, you're animated tonight, Billy. I've known you you're animated.
I want baseball to start. So, golfing the last day of negotiations, laughing during the press conference, announcing he's canceling games. Even you go back outright lying to the fans, telling fans, owning a team's not profitable. These people have owned these teams 20, 30, 40 years. It's not sucking that much money out of them. They still own the teams. They haven't put them on the market yet. Can't be that, expensive to own a team. So I don't even know. I mean, the first question when someone's buying a team, like the first question, whatever MLB question should be, do you like baseball? That should be it. That should be. Thanks, John. I'll keep that in mind. Do you like baseball? There has to be 30 rich-ass people in the world that like baseball enough to want to put a good team on the field and put a good product out there. And even if they're not drawing every dime out of it, still make it entertaining and want to have a team that, just for the sake of pride, they want the team they own to be successful. Let alone the fact that you make more money when your team is successful because you get the playoff revenue, you get more people in seats, get more people buying merchandise. So they need to find a whole lot of new owners. I would say at least 66% of the owners need to go.
Well, based on the stat off I gave you, I would say at least 10 owners should be replaced based off the payroll issue. At least 10 of them.
I don't know where do you go from here really, because it's gonna. I don't know. Whenever this is done, it's gonna be just a countdown for the next CBA expires, and we do this all over again. My old boss was a pilot, right? And so in times or so, we would watch the videos breaking down plane crashes. And the term they used a lot was called death spiral. And what it is when a plane is starting to go down and eventually it tilts too much and it's going to spiral down. There's nothing you can do to stop it from crashing to the ground. That's where baseball is right now. It is starting the death spiral. This is going to be a cycle that never ends at this point, I think, unfortunately, until Rob Manfred goes and some of these cheap owners that should not be owning pro sports franchises go be an academic director at a college or something where you don't have to pay players. I don't know. Figure it out. That's what I think.
Or listen, if they're really concerned about money, invest in gold right now because gold is up through the roof. So I mean, but certainly not investing in your Major League Baseball team. I mean, Patrick, I know how you're going to feel on this when it comes to Commissioner Manfred, but certainly he's not going to be convinced or confused with Commissioner Gordon, let's say, in the Batman movies. But give me your thoughts when it comes to I knew Chris would like that because he's a Batman fan. The Batman movie is out right now, so yes. I figured that would be a good little segue there. But Patrick, give me your thoughts on Commissioner Manfred and sort of your displeasure.
Right now, he's like a lieutenant. He's not even commissioner level. He's been demoted a couple of times. He's a clown. He's a clown. He thinks that the World Series trophy is a hunk of metal or a hunk of tin. He doesn't like the game that he's in charge of, and that's got to change. Look, not every team can beat Tampa Bay. Not every team can spend their money. Not every team is cheap and smart at the same time. And other teams are looking at that. And they're so I blame a little bit on Tampa getting away with winning.
Oakland as well has done it for a long time.
But I think it goes back to Manfred. Manfred has enough of this blame. I could say what I think of him, but we wouldn't be on air. So.
Oh, no, especially now that we're on Tobacco Road Sports Radio. I know.
But he's got to. Something's got to give.
That we definitely can agree on for sure. And Chris, I mean, certainly again, Commissioner Manfred is certainly no Commissioner Gordon, but I mean, what do we do here? I mean, who's going to get the bat signal here and maybe get something different here and something better? I mean, give me your thoughts on Commissioner Manfred.
I think for the league, I wish the league would get rid of him as commissioner and bring in somebody who both sides agree to, because this guy, you got to remember, he is hired by the owners. Right? That's who we're talking about. So he's basically, whatever he says is what the owners want him to say. So, I mean, we say we hate Manfred. We basically hate most of the owners, right? You named all those teams. Those are the main culprits. There's a few more. You can even put the Angels. The Angels said no to the
Artie Moreno, sure.
So, but but that would be my choice. My thing would be bring in somebody, not just for the owners, but bring in somebody who's a better spokesman for the league, because that's what I mean, even though he's hired by the owners and the owners are telling him what to say, he's basically a puppet, but get somebody else who's a better spokesman for the league. Like we always talk about the NFL, Roger Goodell. We always say he's the worst commissioner in sports, but he's nowhere near as bad as Manfred is.
Because he comes across a lot less inoffensive, whereas Manfred, it's almost like the word they would use is tone deaf, and that's why Ron Laird has jumped on here and says that worst commissioner ever. I mean, that's what it comes down to is that, listen, I mean, if you're thinking about commissioners, I mean, not to say that Bud Selig was super duper great, but man, I miss Bud Selig compared to Rob Manfred. I
he
mean,
was
that's
horrible
just
too.
right, but that's the point. I mean, because again, Seelig was a part of this mess, and he was responsible for it. And those are some unfortunate things here. And I got to get the brute force in here very quickly on Commissioner Manfred, because I know he's always going to have something brute like here, especially because people seem to have liked the video clip we posted on Instagram. I think I had like more people view our post on Instagram than I had in like 3 months. So clearly, for whatever reason, people might want to see this on the video if they missed this. So the brute force, I mean, Commissioner Manfred, I mean, unload on him.
Yeah, I mean, I got to be careful, like Patrick. We might be off the air if I say certain things, but this is the first way I'm going to say. This is the first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to say that Rob Manfred and James Dolan should go on a date together. All right, because they arguably are the two worst things that have happened to sports in this era. Okay,
who's picking up the check?
We all know about James Dolan. He is the worst owner in the history of sports. All right, he is awful. Then we have Rob Manfred, who by far is the worst commissioner. I mean, he makes all these bad commissioners we talk about in the NHL, the NFL, right? He makes them look great, amazing. He is absolutely horrible. And he's horrible in so many different aspects. I could be here all night. I mean, the rule changes, the way that, like Patrick said, he doesn't even love the damn game. He calls the championship trophy, whatever nonsense he said. I don't even want to say it because I don't want to say it out of my mouth because it's embarrassing that he would even say that. And then just, like Billy said, I mean, laughing at the press conference. I mean, that is just absolutely disgusting. Like, you watch that and you just see a guy who you don't want representing your sport. And it's just crazy because I've had a job before, Tom Bryce, where I worked at a doctor's office, right? And there was a bunch of doctors.
I remember that job. I'm aware of it.
Yes, and a bunch of doctors that I worked with, and then there was a boss. And everybody hated the boss because she was awful, and she was awful. But in the end, who's telling the boss what to say? The doctors were telling him what to say. And in the end, yes, the owners are the issue. But Rob Manfred, in my opinion, right, has to say what the owners say, but he's also putting some things himself. And some of these ideas and some of these ways that he comes about things just make him look so bad and make baseball fans all across the world just fed up, pissed off. And he has actually himself led to people being disinterested in baseball. Come on, John Gonzalez. I
can't even repeat the comment. I got to be honest. I can't even repeat what he said. All I'll say is that the brute force from John Gonzalez is saying that Dolan, you can pretty much read it for yourself and comment there on that. That's all I'm going to say toward that. I mean,
listen, I'm just going to finish with this because we have, like I said, we have a current baseball player in high school who is playing for his high school right now as a pitcher. And like we have talked about in the past, look at the baseball fields now with the younger kids. All right, and it's really because of people like Rob Manfred is the reason why the interest in baseball is plummeting, right? And it's just because of his image, right? We think about MLB, and we're supposed to think about baseball. MLB has now become Rob Manfred, right? We're looking, when we think about Major League Baseball, we think about Rob Manfred because that's how embarrassing they are right now. And you hear people like Marcus Stroman, he went on Twitter and absolutely blasted him. I mean, these are how the players feel. Not all of them are coming out, but this is how players feel. They hate this guy. They hate how he represents the sport. And in the end, he's embarrassing the sport, and he's ruining baseball, not only for all of us who are diehard baseball fans, but kids who are growing up and interested in the sport who are now going to sports like lacrosse and other sports instead of baseball because of how the MLB looks.
It's funny you say that, the brute force. I'm walking home last night. It's about maybe 6 o'clock, 6:30 or so, by Clove Lakes Park, where I live in Staten Island here, and I couldn't believe it. My eyes, I saw lacrosse. I saw people playing lacrosse. So it shows you, listen, I mean, baseball fields ever. I remember as a kid, Marine Park and Shore Road and Clove Lakes Park, by me, all these parks in New York City, baseball diamonds were filled. Now, I mean, it's just, you couldn't find anybody to play on the field. I mean, Jason, I got to ask you then, because you're actually playing currently. You're in high school. You're a little bit younger than most of us here. I mean, what's it like? I mean, being a baseball player when, like, do a lot of people that you're friends with don't play baseball as much? I mean, talk to me about that very quick, because I'm kind of curious now, because you got me thinking after what the brute force, what he said just now.
With the school I go to, we have a big baseball culture. So it's not really, I mean, our lacrosse team isn't really that
Very
good.
good.
Yeah, so I mean, we're a big baseball school. I mean, we had a kid graduate last year going to Michigan playing baseball. So it's different from my school, but I see it in other schools. Like baseball is declining. A lot of kids go to play lacrosse, even track now. A lot of kids that were on the baseball team are doing track.
Why track?
I think they like the more field part of it, like all the throws and stuff.
Is it maybe the energy part of it? Because baseball, again, it's not as maybe energetic as the other sports. I mean, let's say basketball is an example,
Yeah.
or football. I think that's why maybe.
I mean, baseball, it's seen as boring now by like kids my age. No one wants to sit down and watch a baseball game anymore.
And to Jason's point, I mean, as a coach, you just see that. You just see the disinterest in that sport. And, you know, it is.
I find it hard to believe. I got to be honest. I remember as a kid, again, I'm only a little bit older than the brute force. And I remember as a kid I just couldn't wait to be on the baseball field and be a part of a 3-4 hour baseball game. I just loved the thrill of that bat in my hands, the sound of the bat, the ball, the glove. I mean, the smell of the glove. I mean, to me, was so excited when I was growing up and thinking about now baseball. It usually meant that the weather was turning, and it was just a great thing. And to hear that from Jason, that baseball is seen as, and we've talked about this, we've confirmed what we've talked about, you and I, Brad, maybe a few others, is that baseball is a boring game. I mean, it's hard to fathom. I got to be honest.
Yeah, it definitely is. It's definitely crazy. But in the end, listen, it's at fault of the sport. It's at fault of, obviously MLB, because they're the ones that everybody looks at. It's just like, the NBA, everybody's looking at the NBA if they want to be basketball players. And with this age, at this time, a lot of players, at Jason's level and going down, the younger kids, they commit to a sport and they play it all year round. And baseball, the issue with baseball also, especially here in our tri-state area, is that you can't play baseball all year round. So a lot of kids are not only, they're not only disinterested because of what is going on with baseball currently, but they can't play it all year round. So it's becoming just a declining effect. And until baseball does something, whether it's getting rid of Manfred or, doing something to excite kids, but everything that they've done, Tom, is they basically slack themselves in the face because they think they're doing something to help the younger generation, but they're not in the end.
Clearly they're not, and clearly we certainly hope that they get their acts together. Clearly we hope to see more people playing baseball, and clearly we hope to see the Major League Baseball players play baseball. I do know one thing, that there'll be a minor league baseball season soon. I'm sure that the Honorable MC Ernest Dove is going to be coming back and maybe speaking with us at some point. I mean, unfortunately, we would have him on the Friday shows to maybe speak some minor league baseball, but he can never come on Friday. So we'll work on it. We'll definitely make that happen for sure. But we certainly hope that the baseball players get their acts together and everybody does have a season, because listen, we're all baseball fans. We're all sports fans at the end of the day. And I think that that's what counts most here. But I do want to jump over to the NFL here real quick, because there's a number of different news here. And the first news I want to go with here is Aaron Rodgers, because Aaron Rodgers, it seems to me like he was the topic of talk radio all throughout the week here. And I'm still at this point with all the different developments with this guy. And I think I asked this question last week, and I'm even further confused this week when it comes to Aaron Rodgers. And it was sort of at a point where he has to make a decision here pretty soon. And I'm going to go with Billy here first. I mean, what do you make of this whole situation with Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers?
Having flashbacks to Brett Favre years when he would retire and then unretire and then retire and then unretire, and it's funny because that's what Aaron Rodgers was the one caught in limbo with that, right? He never knew who was going to be starting or on the bench behind Favre. So now he's doing it to Jordan Love. He's doing it to the Packers, and he talked in early on about he wants to make a decision quickly so that Devontae Adams can know what he's going to do, and the Packers know if they're going to tag Adams and all of this stuff that it's time to make a decision, dude. Like, you're coming up on the window of franchise tag players, free agency starting. That you got to know what to do with you. I mean, at the point where if you're the Packers, do you start to consider just trading this guy anyway, just to and have some sort of resolution and know how this is going to end, because I'm sure you have to be a little worried. He's going to say, "Oh, I'm coming back," and then 2 months later, they actually, not be happy with the draft class, and all of a sudden decide he's not going to play for them. I wouldn't rule that out completely. So I don't know. At some point, the Packers might make this decision for him. The way this is going, I would start to consider that if I were the Packers. I can't have a starting quarterback that I don't know if he's going to be playing or not. I don't know if he's going to be on a trade or not. At some point, they need to get the situation back into their hands, and that might mean trading Rodgers to a team and bringing back a quarterback that they isn't as talented, but they know is going to be there and going to be playing and wants to play. Because who knows what Aaron Rodgers wants to do at this point.
I think that's pretty much the nook of all this is what does Aaron Rodgers what to do? I mean, Patrick, if you're the Green Bay Packers, are you just at the mercy of Aaron Rodgers because he's Aaron Rodgers and you just got to do what he says? I mean, what's your thoughts now on the situation with Aaron Rodgers?
Yes, and I think you're at the mercy of Aaron Rodgers, and Rodgers loves that, and he wouldn't want it any other way. He wants people talking about him. He wants to stay relevant, and he wants to do it his way. And even though he set a self-imposed deadline, I think he's going to try to push this as far as he can and just make up his mind when he's, whenever he wants. And I think if you're the Packers, I hear what Billy's saying, but if you trade him and you don't get back a great package for that, and he goes on and plays somewhere else and wins somewhere else, that's not a good look. So at this point, I think it all started with the COVID protocols with Aaron Rodgers. They pretty much, gave him a blank check and let him dictate the rules as far as, what's going to happen. And the Packers now have to live with that. And this is like his second act. He's like, well, if you let me get away with that stuff, wait till you see me this offseason.
But here's my gripe with that, Chris, especially. Aaron Rodgers, you give him all those things, you give him the blank checks, but what's his record in big games again?
Exactly. He's got one Super Bowl to his name. The last 2 years, everybody says he should stay in Green Bay because it's an easier road to the Super Bowl. Because if he goes to the AFC, all the big time, all the top quarterbacks are there now, so it's a tougher road. But he's had everything handed to him the last 2 years. He's had the number one spot. He's had home field advantage in the playoffs the last 2 years. And for a different word, he's choked the last 2 years. I'm sorry. Right? He
definitely choked. I mean, listen, he lost to
Does that team get to where they were with Jordan Love?
Huh?
I know he choked on the big stage, but at least they're getting to the play. You know what I mean? I'm just saying be careful. If you trade him and you go with Jordan Love, you might not get back to hosting a playoff game.
Oh, I agree. I'm not saying Jordan Love is, but we don't. The whole thing is Jordan Love is a huge question mark. We've only seen him play that one game, so who knows how he's going to, perform if he knows he's got the starting gig from week one and prepares for it and everything else. That's a whole other ball game. So I'm not saying he's not going to be Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, I mean that's kind of crazy, but I think he's got to come up with a decision soon, right? Because the offseason is going to start. The new league year is going to start soon. So I think teams are going to want to know what to do.
I think it was about a week. We have about less than a week, I think, until he's supposed to, quote unquote, in his terms, make a decision.
Yeah.
I think that's what I've heard.
Yeah, so I it's got to come soon, and like Patrick said, they got to make sure that they get, at least 2 first-round picks. Even that. I mean, there's no guarantee, obviously, with a draft pick. Even if it's a first-rounder, you're going to get anybody remotely close to Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is a first-ballot Hall of Famer, one of the greatest quarterbacks we've ever seen. Choke or not choke the last couple of years, he's still one of the greatest quarterbacks we've ever seen in our lifetime. So it's almost impossible to get, equal, return for Aaron Rodgers. So even if they get 3 first-round picks and you get 3 really good players.
Hey, listen, you could get 4 first-round, 5 first-round picks.
Right. They're all lottery tickets, basically, right? I mean, we've seen it. Lottery first-round picks are, hit or miss, obviously. So it's just, to me, I would be frustrated as the Green Bay Packers. As the fans, I'd be frustrated because, it's like, well, what are we doing here? Just, you're either here or you're not. You want to stay here? Just say it. Listen, I want to be here. Let's figure this out. If not, move me on. Here's my list of teams I want to go to, and that's it. And that's going to be the second thing that's going to be interesting. If he does go, is he going to give them a list of certain teams he wants to go to? Because I'm sure he wants to play for a winner. So I think that's going to be obviously on his list. And is Green Bay going to be okay trading him to an NFC team?
Well, I'll tell you, they're not going to trade him in the division.
No,
Forget trading him to
definitely not
Minnesota,
Chicago,
the
right?
Bears. Maybe the Lions. Maybe the Brute Force's Lions they'll trade him to.
That would be like, yeah, you know what? You want to get traded? Good.
Go to
We'll
the
just send you to Detroit. No disrespect against the Lions, guys. So if there's any Lion fans out there, we're sorry.
Well, we're in North Carolina with Tobacco Road Radio. Yeah, I highly doubt that there's
Probably
any
not, right?
Lions fans.
John
really
Gonzalez
there.
is out there.
Maybe Carolina.
Apologize to him.
Well,
That's
you
right.
know
He's a
what?
Lions fan.
Carolina,
Maybe the Panthers.
that would not surprise me. And Ron Laird's got a comment, and he's here, and he says, "Hey, the weather is nice in Tampa, Aaron." Ooh, I mean, listen, there is an opening
and they
there.
do need a quarterback.
That's an interesting one. And John Gonzalez goes in and says there aren't any big time QB prospects. Pickett, Cora Willis are not exactly that good. Well, Kenny Pickett, I mean, if Justin Gianelli was here, he would tell you how great Kenny Pickett is. So I mean, there are some people that really believe in Kenny Pickett, but there are some people that do make a point that say, well, who did he really play against? And John Gonzalez is in here and says, go Lions. So, yeah, I mean, so then you
watch all those quarterbacks turn out to be great. Who knows? I mean,
Right, exactly.
We
don't
don't
know.
point,
But
the NFL draft, it's a
But that's the
lottery
whole.
ticket.
Well, that's
It's
the
a
whole thing.
crapshoot.
You just never know, and I'm curious for the Brute Force and Jason, obviously, because they're following the situation. I mean, what do you make of this whole situation with Aaron Rodgers? I mean, what do you guys think?
Well, here's my issue with Aaron Rodgers. All right,
Okay.
and we talked about this last week, and it just disgusts me. You know, and just to start this, basically, you have a guy like Jason here who doesn't really follow the NFL, right? But he has to hear about Aaron damn Rodgers because this man makes himself have to be talked about over and over and over again. What has he done that he gets to get talked about all the time? He goes on the Pat McAfee show. He goes on any possible show to appear himself. He talks on social media more than any other player. I mean, this man has to get himself talked about or else he's depressed. I mean, he literally, all we talk about in the offseason now and for the NFL is Aaron Rodgers. It's like the first topic that's going on in every single ESPN, Fox. Everyone who's talking about the NFL is talking about Aaron Rodgers, and there's really no reason for this. I know he's a good quarterback. I know, it's interesting to see where he's going to go. But in the end, make a decision, man. Like, we don't need to talk every single day about, is he going to do this, is he going to do that. Aaron Rodgers makes us do it because of the way that he has to come out and ultimately talk about it. So in the end, I still think at this moment, Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers is going to end up staying in Green Bay. I have a feeling for it because, like everybody's saying, and I've said it all along, the AFC has a lot of great young quarterbacks. And, I just don't think Aaron Rodgers going to the AFC is going to be great for him. If he wants to take on that challenge and be all mighty and tough and be like, yeah, this is going to be the challenge I take on, I'm going to beat all these young guys, then let's see it, Aaron Rodgers. But make a damn decision already. Because ultimately, just like last offseason where it took him forever, we were talking every damn day about what he was going to do. This guy is on, going to horse racing events, and, we see him in his nice suits, and we're talking about him. And why are we talking about him? That's really the problem that I have at this point. Like everybody said, his playoff record when it comes to winning in big games is awful, and he just came off losing the Jimmy damn G in the playoffs in the first. Jimmy G. All right, he lost to, and he couldn't even score 10 points, more than 10 points. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, the fact that we have to talk about him, Tom Brady, is just because of him. He makes us do it.
No question, and I want to get to a few comments here really quickly. And Ron Ladd, we showed it on the screen here, says that he thinks that Kenny Pickett is going to be pretty good. Yeah, I mean, listen, some people do think that. Justin Gianelli has been raving about him for months. I mean, John Gonzalez again here says Rodgers is great on the field, but he's a head case off the field. Yeah, I mean, that's obviously a no-brainer. I mean, listen, take a step back. I mean, the guy couldn't handle Olivia Munn, Danica Patrick, and Cheyenne Woodley, who he might be back together. So I don't want to get in too much trouble for I'm about to say, but clearly there's some issues there because he couldn't figure out to get it right with any one of those three. That's all I'm going to say. And again, Ron Laird says he thinks that Aaron Rodgers was the MVP last year. Well, I mean, obviously in the regular season, he's been a hell of a player. But in terms of the postseason, that's my issue with them, and I'm sure even some Packers fans would agree with that. And then John Gonzalez has chimed in here, and I guess he clearly knows what we might talk about here. Will Tom Brady unretire? I mean, I don't know. I mean, that seems to be the growing topic here. I mean, it seems to be all the topic. Another guy, I guess, that's inadvertently dominating the news cycle, and I don't know. I mean, Jason, let me ask you a question though, real quick, as a player, because you're playing right now. You're playing a couple of different sports. I mean, well, how would you like an Aaron Rodgers as a teammate? Because he's clearly a head case off the field, regardless of what's going on here. I mean, how do you deal with somebody like this?
Feel like it's the same way dealing with a guy like Kyrie. Just gotta. It's tough.
Do you let them just have their own space and just say, "Hey, do what you got to do. Just be good on the field and help us win"? And I really could care less about whatever you do off the field. Is that the kind of approach maybe you use that for?
I mean, if you're winning games, then you're winning.
Okay, fair point. I mean, do you look at it though in a sense? Well, we've won, but ultimately we haven't won the championship. Does it, as a player, would you look at that and say, "Hey, maybe you should change what you're doing off the field," or still the same feeling? I mean, you're looking at it a little differently because you are a player currently. That's why I would ask you that question.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know what to say.
It's a tough one because, again, there's two schools of thought with that. I mean, again, you could certainly see why, again, some people would say, well, change the course and be the right teammate. But, again, the stats show itself here, and I do almost have to throw it out there because John Gonzalez does mention, will Tom Brady unretire? I mean, I might as well should ask this everybody. I mean, Billy, Tom Brady, how are we going to continue to talk about him throughout the offseason, or is he done permanently? What do you think?
I mean, it's going to keep coming up for sure. Anyone who retires at playing at the high level is going to keep coming up. I don't see it. I think that if I don't mean to say this like blaming his wife for his retirement or anything. I think if he was single, he'd still be playing, but he has a family now. His kids are getting older. You know, I'm sure he's missed a lot of, birthdays, events, whatever. There comes a point where, and there's going to come a point where like avocado ice cream isn't fun anymore, right? Doing all this stuff you have to do to be ready to play at that level at that age. There's a point where it's just not, you're not having fun, and you've certainly made enough money where you don't need to keep going to work if you're not having fun. So I don't see him coming back. And he never struck me as someone who was going to retire and then unretire. I think once he's done, he's done. So I think he's so competitively locked into football that I think it's impossible for him to kind of leave that mind frame and then get back into it and play at that same level. I think he knows that. So it's going to keep coming up the way like Andrew Luck keeps coming up every offseason, at least until, the Buccaneers.
Well, did anybody see Andrew Luck during the college football playoff? I mean, he ain't coming back.
I don't think Brady's coming back either. I think
he ain't coming back.
I think both of them are very. I think Andrew Luck's very happy to be done with football. I think Tom Brady.
Well, did you see it, Billy? Andrew Luck. I mean, I love you, Billy, but did you see him? Did you see the way he looked?
Yeah, he looked like he was about 100 pounds. He
looked more skinnier than me. Let's be honest. I'm not exactly a twig.
Made a ton of money playing football. He's got an architecture degree from Stanford. Good for him. He can do whatever he wants at this point.
Sure.
Same thing with Brady. So I don't see it. I don't see Tom Brady making a return. Maybe I've been wrong. I'll be wrong. I've been wrong about it before, but I think he's done.
I mean, listen, it very well could be. I was speaking with, before I get to Patrick, who's going to know a lot about Tom Brady, obviously, and one of our listeners, a guy, Ed Mazzadri, who's a huge Brady fan. I had asked him this question yesterday because he heard us talking about it last week, and he said he didn't think Brady was going to come back at this point just because of the age, and he kind of felt that the way Brady played at times in the regular season was certainly you don't know what you're going to get at this point. You really are going year to year, so it might be a little bit of a different case than certainly an Aaron Rodgers. I mean, Patrick, you know Tom Brady better than any of us because obviously you've seen the man up close. You've watched him as a Patriots fan. I mean, is he really going to unretire?
Yeah, I think he's coming back.
Really? Okay.
I have no clue where he's going to play, but if he wants to come back to New England, no. I think I really think that he just can't say no to the game. I think he's going to. I'm going to go the opposite of Billy and just say that because he's such a football junkie that he just can't. He's going to have to be told, dude, you got to stop playing. It's going to be an injury or it's going to be something off the field. That might be with his family situation, like Billy was saying, but I think he's still up there playing at a great level. And
Oh, he's
the
playing
season
better than
didn't
Daniel
exact-
Jones did this season. That's for
the
sure.
season didn't end the way he wanted to this past season, and I really think he should have retired when he won the Super Bowl in Tampa. That kind of be his mic drop moment, showing everyone that he can win outside of New England and all that. But again, I think the reason why he still plays is because he's just addicted to the grind of football. And I don't think it's about, I think they're going to have to tell him you've had enough.
I hope, before I get to Chris, the Brute Force, and Jason, I hope for Tom Brady's sake, if he does come back, it's not going to be similar than there was a legendary boxer, Evander Holyfield, that he fought so long that essentially they had to tell him, listen, champ, you're great. You're one of the all-time greats, but really we're not going to let you actually go out there and fight. I mean, and Evander Holyfield, I think his last fight was around maybe 50 or 51. So Tom Brady's not too far behind. So, I mean, I'm not trying to say that Tom Brady would be an Evander Holyfield and just hang on for dear life forever and ever and ever. But there is that school of thought where, I mean, how much longer can you do it? What do you have to prove? And John Gonzalez had said Gronk is drawing a lot of interest from Buffalo, his hometown. I mean, I'll get Patrick real quick on that. You buy into any of that at all? Gronk going to Buffalo before I get to the guys here on Tom Brady?
Well, I mean, he does obviously have roots up in Buffalo, but I think they're happy with Dawson Knox, and they've got a couple holes to fill on the rest of their offense. I just think that you'd be paying for past performance. You'd be overpaying for past performance.
Okay.
At his age, so.
That's fair. No, that is certainly a fair point. Thanks, John Gonzalez, for the comment there. And then, I mean, Chris, is Tom Brady really coming back here?
I don't know. I'm going to say no. I'm going to say hopefully no, but definitely I think it's a no. But I heard one idea out there. Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk put it out there that he thinks, and he was pretty confident about it, that he was going to go to San Francisco.
Well, was it you that posted in our group his tweet, or was it Justin Gianelli?
Yeah.
It was somebody that posted the tweet he showed talking about his hometown and sleeping in his own bed. I mean, that kind of did maybe give you some type of clue with the 49ers, I guess.
It could be, but I just think he wants to just, like he was saying before, with the kids, he's got kids that are a little bit older now. There was a picture today that was out that he was taking his kids to play hockey. He's a hockey dad now. I think it's going to be hard to be doing this for a couple of months and then saying, you know what, I'm going to leave this all behind and go back to playing football again. Like, he's got nothing to prove. The guy is arguably or the, greatest of all time quarterback, whatever, wherever you want to.
I think he's one of the greatest athletes of all time for what he's done at the level he's done.
He's got really nothing to prove. I mean, I get it that it'll the pull of wanting to play again. I think that's going to stay with him for. Like you said, Holyfield was 50-something when he finally stopped. I think all of these guys that retire, unless they're physically not able to do it, and even them, I think they still want to play. It's just in them.
Well, the Mets had Julio Franco. I mean, he was playing forever and ever and ever. I mean, he's probably still playing in a league somewhere. There's probably a men's league somewhere that Julio Franco is still batting somewhere right now.
What about the pitcher? What's his name? The lefty.
Bartolo Colon.
No, not Cologne. The guy
Jimmy Moyer?
Moyer. He would have still been pitching now if he didn't blow out. I think it was his shoulder or something.
Yeah, he was 49 when he retired with the Rockies.
I think he would have still been out there. He's a lefty. Lefties, they last forever.
Well, I had on filmmaker Heather Quinlan last night, who did a documentary on the 86 Mets, and we were talking about Jesse Orosco and the line that we used, that basically Jesse Orosco had pitched so long that when he retired, quote unquote, they basically said there's no jobs for you at this point.
I'm sure Jesse Orosco
who pitched the most games, I believe, of any pitcher in history, was I think 46. It was 25 years in the league, 4 decades. So, you just
crazy.
You just don't know. I mean, so I almost got to ask the Brute Force and Jason. I mean, does Tom Brady come back here? I mean, what do you guys make of this whole situation?
Tom, hell no, he's not coming back. Come on with all this nonsense. He's not coming back. All right, and listen, obviously, just like I said, I mean, and Chris said, hopefully not, but I think he's not. I think that the whole thing with his kids. Also, listen, as I've said in the past, I have half my family in Costa Rica. All right, and Tom Brady goes to Costa Rica all the time, and
I would sign up if I'm Tom Brady. I would be going to Costa Rica every moment.
Think him more than ever. I think the sunshine, the palm trees, and the relaxation is starting to hit in. That it's time for him just to take some time away and move on. I think that he's gotten to that stage. I think his kids have become important. Obviously, Giselle has become important, with more time. So in the end, I don't see Tom Brady coming back. I think it's over. I think, he's not going to come back to the NFL. I know that he has that passion. I know there's going to be the rumors, Tom Bryce, because we just can't stop talking about him. But, in the end, I do think that he decides to quit it now. I don't think he comes back, and I think you see him a lot more on the beaches in Costa Rica than on the football field.
Well, have you seen his wife? I mean, listen, I can't argue that one bit if he's with the beach with his wife, especially his wife. I mean, Jason, you think Brady comes back at all, or what do you think here?
I don't think there's any chance. He has nothing to prove anymore. He's definitely in GOAT talk, so him coming back, he looks like a family man now. He's got different priorities, and he's not worried about money, obviously.
And I think, you know what, there's a certain point, and obviously being at 45, right? So you think about your kids and how much you have in terms of living the quality life that you would as an individual, and putting himself in the condition that he's had in his body, especially. I mean, realistically, in a sense, there is a point. What do you have to prove? I mean, what if something does happen out there and you can't go out and walk? I speak with a lot of wrestlers all the time, and there's so many wrestlers that are in their 50s and they go into their 60s, and it's like they can barely walk. I mean, if you're Tom Brady, I mean, God forbid something happens out there. I mean, your kids are going to be, in their teens and 20s, let's say in 10 years from now. You're going to be in your 50s. You're not going to be able to enjoy those times, and there's moments. So, I mean, from one sense, I could certainly see that standpoint. But as athletes and competitors, you do want to still go out there. And I know it's a very, very hard thing. I mean, Brad, you obviously just finished playing SJC. You've been able to transition. Jason, you are playing, and it's going to be something that you're going to have to deal with one day. And very quickly, I do want to get to something for you, Chris. And John Gonzalez had pointed out very quickly that he said he heard a rumor out there that Amari Cooper was going to the Jets. You want to comment on that very quickly?
I don't know if he's going to go to the Jets, but I'm sure they're going to be looking into it. He's probably going to get released by
Dallas.
Yeah. So listen, the Jets definitely need at least one more receiver. I could see them snooping in and definitely checking him out, but are they going to be willing to spend $20 million on this guy a season? That's what it's going to come down to. I don't know if they're going to. Are you going to go up that high? Because that's what he's getting paid is $20 million. So are you going to go for him? I'd like to see them get a tight end. Hoping that they sign Schultz from Dallas as well, as long as they don't tag him, because they definitely need a tight end more than anybody on offense right now. So, but I could see him going to the Jets without a doubt. It's just that they do have other holes to fill. So I don't know if they're going to put $20 million of their cash.
Look at the production that you get. Is it worth the $20 million?
I know. He's definitely a top wide receiver. So he's definitely, I would say he's worth the money.
Okay.
But you also got a lot of money in Davis, the other wide receiver. He didn't exactly pan out. And I think after this season, they can get out of his contract pretty easily. So I don't think that's going to stop them from it. It's just that they have other holes. So I don't know if they're going to go big on a wide receiver. I think that if anything, they'll go big on the tight end. And since the draft is so deep in wide receiver, they could pick one up in the second round. It's going to be a very good receiver. So that's why I don't think so. And the other thing you just put up real quick, I'll comment on it real fast.
I did, because I want to get Brad and Jason on it before.
I don't think Philly is going to trade for Russell Wilson.
I did hear that overnight. There was a couple, I think it was a couple of days ago, I had heard a few callers bring up the same thing that John Gonzalez had did. And John Gonzalez has one other comment I'll get to in a second. But Chris, go ahead on Russell Wilson and why you think he's not going to go to the Eagles.
I think Philly's going to give Hurts at least one more shot, at least another year, see if he could progress at all from last year. I mean, he did get them into the playoffs this season. So, and they got those 3 first-round picks. At least one of them is probably going to be a wide receiver. The other 2 are probably going to go for the defense because they need a lot of help on defense. But I think they're going to say, hey, listen, let's try to surround him with more talent, and let's see how he does. If he if he gets us back to the playoffs, if he progresses well, we're in great shape. You know,
Yeah, I feel like with him, you got to look at him a little differently than, let's say, a Daniel Jones. I hate to bring up Daniel Jones because the Eagles did get to the postseason, and they kind of got to the postseason on schedule, maybe a little bit earlier than schedule. So
Definitely.
that might be one way to look at that. And before I get to John Gonzalez's next comment, for the Brute Force, and I'll even throw Jason there because obviously he's an Eagles fan. I mean, the Brute Force first. Would you want Amari Cooper for the Jets?
Here's the thing, Tom. Right?
I know you hate Dallas. That's why.
This is what you're talking about a cowboy, for God's sake. Not only a cowboy who's allergic to prosperity, all right, but you're also talking about a selfish player. Why is he going out of Dallas? Because he's upset that he doesn't get the ball more. Because he's upset about what's going on. Do you think he's going to come to the Jets and be Mr. Nice Guy? He's going to be a pain in the you-know-what. We don't want that on the Jets. We have a young quarterback in Zach Wilson that's trying to develop. And if he feels he has to get Amari Cooper the ball and start pressing, he's going to get back to his bad habits that he ended up leaving, right? At the end of the season, we were so happy about his picks having gone so down, where I think he had like one pick in his last 5 games, if I'm right, Chris. So, I mean, that's what we want. We want him to play freely. We don't want him to have to worry. And Amari Cooper, his allergic Dallas Cowboys past, his selfishness. Ultimately, we don't want that on the team. So I'm not a fan of that at all. And I've said it in the past to Russell Wilson. I mean, Philadelphia, I don't see that. I think Jalen Hurts, I think you give him another year at least. I could see Russell Wilson with another team in the division, the Washington Commanders. I've said that. I think Washington.
Get used to saying that.
They did make a big offer to them. Did you see that?
I didn't, but ultimately, I think that's a better fit for him. And there's other teams. I just don't think the Eagles are that team right now. And certainly, the one team that Mr. Jason Getz roots for over here is the Giants. They could use him, but we all have talked about that they're not going to go and pursue a guy like Russell Wilson. So ultimately, it's just crazy. No Amari Cooper for the Jets and Russell Wilson. We'll see what happens. But in the end, it's kind of seeming more and more like we haven't heard many trade rumors and stuff. It sounds like maybe Russell Wilson might actually stay in Seattle after all this talk.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you can't move him for what you're looking for, maybe that's the play. Try it one more year. You're going to keep Pete Carroll there. I mean, you've got, I guess, somewhat of a core there. So maybe that's the case. I do have a John Gonzalez comment here I want to get to quickly. But, Jason, since you are a Giants fan, you wouldn't want Russell Wilson over Daniel Jones? Or how do you feel about that?
I think the Giants have other things to focus on. I think we need a line, first of all. You can't have a QB without a good line.
Good point.
We've seen that for years. Terrible line. I think we should keep Daniel Jones. You got to stick with. I think
they are keeping him. They're keeping him for one more year. That's pretty much what we're going to do.
I think he could be a valuable player if he had the pieces around him.
And do you think Saquon Barkley stays as well? Because that was a big topic I was hearing throughout the week as well. What do you think with Barkley?
Honestly, at this point, I don't know. He's looking very injury prone. It might be time to send him off.
Well, they're gonna have a decision for that, and I want to get to John Gonzalez's comment here before I get to make my few announcements. Because we have about 40 or so minutes here on the stream tonight. And I think this one's for Patrick. And John Gonzalez says here, Cole Beasley is getting traded by Buffalo. I mean, Patrick, you're our resident Bills expert. I'm sure you'll speak about this on the Liftoff Jet Show next week. Is there any truth to that, you think, here from what John Gonzalez is saying about Cole Beasley being traded by Buffalo?
Yeah, this afternoon they kind of mutually agreed to not part ways, but to, I think it's a definite matter of when, not if, he gets traded. And it's a mutually beneficial thing where they help stay under the cap, but then they have to allocate more resources to a free agency as far as filling his position. I don't know where he wants to play next year, but like I said, I think he was due to make too much money considering the emergence of Gabriel Davis in the playoffs last year. He's not making as much, so it'll give the Bills a chance to. That's another thought. coming quick with these thoughts.
John was like, John and Ron Laird. I mean, they've been on
It's
fire.
like Adam
today.
Schefter here.
Listen, I did a stream last night, and we had this woman I'm friends with. She was just commenting left and right, and tonight it's pretty much John Gonzalez left and right here. I mean, Billy, you want Mitchell Trubisky at all here? That's what John Gonzalez says here.
I think he's gonna get priced out of their range. It actually sounds like there are some teams that see him as a starting quarterback. And if that's the case, the Giants are not going to be able to afford him, no matter what they do salary cap wise. And I think in general, I think he's someone who kind of needs like a lot of help around him, much more than the Giants can give him right now. I think there are teams that he can make sense on. Maybe the Saints, if they don't go with Jameis. Maybe the Buccaneers, he'd be a decent fit on. There are teams that he could.
And our Carolina Panthers, of course, our second team now, our new team, Carolina Panthers.
Yeah. So there are teams that I think are in a better position to give him a good situation and pay him more than the Giants can. So I don't think he's coming to New York for that reason, really.
Yeah, well, I mean, Trubisky, we talked about him. Go ahead, Chris, jump in.
What about the Giants? Maybe not Trubisky, but bringing in an actual backup quarterback. Because
I heard that on the fan overnight a couple of days ago, that there was basically that what a number of callers were saying was that that's what you should do. Don't make Jones the starter and give him pretty much a blank slate here. Just have him work. Have a veteran come in and at least maybe work and have him fight in the.
What about Mariota? How about that, Billy?
I mean, if Mariota, I think, makes more sense than Trubisky. Just I think Trubisky can get priced out of their range. What it really comes down to is money. How much money can they clear? They're still over the cap. There's not. I mean, we have this in the chat. Logan Ryan, Kenny Golladay, Leonard Williams are all guys that you can't do anything with this year because you're not going to clear money by getting rid of them. So they're over the cap with limited moves they can make to get under the cap. I don't think that they want to kick the can down the road more with some of these guys because they've seen that be an issue. I honestly think that they're going to take the approach of this is kind of a lost year and get the salary cap situated as best we can and try to just deal with the pain this year. Let Yeldon's mistakes come to fruition and let them. You got to pay the piper at some point, right? I think Shane's going to take this year to be that year where you pay the piper, deal with the salary cap, and then next year you start to really build. So I kind of think this year it's going to be basically almost like what the Texans did last year, fill the roster with a lot of cheaper players and younger players and just try to feel the team and then hopefully, not have any kind of long-term commitments salary cap-wise.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what you got.
I think Mariota for, 1 year, within a reasonable price range. I mean, Jones has struggled to stay healthy, which is also a concern. So, yeah, certainly if you can get him at a reasonable price, I think it makes sense. But I don't know. I just wonder what his salary is going to be like and, what they can afford.
Well, it's certainly fair points. And I think, listen, with the Giants, is this kind of going to be the throwaway year, whereas with the Jets, and I heard Chris mention this in the Liftoff Jets show, and I certainly heard Rick DiPietro say this, the ex-Islanders goaltender, that the Jets, this year's got to be about playing meaningful football games. Doesn't mean making the postseason, but meaningful games to say the least here. And Anthony Finkel has checked in here. He says, we know what time it is, Friday night sports night with the boys, and he gave us a trophy. And speaking of those with trophies, I mean, Anthony Finkel was on New York One the other day. I see Steve Saperstein posted on his Facebook page, Anthony, that he sees you on New York One, Anthony Finkel. So you're the one that it's time for us to be with the boys in the trophy. But we are talking all things related here to the world of sports and much, much more on Sportswire Radio, also on sportnarium.com/player here on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, also the Northeast Streaming Sports Channel on Roku, and also Tobacco Sports Radio here, TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com, and Tobacco Radio on Twitter. Of course, shout out as always to Linda and Mac McGrath, and of course as well Desmond Johnson. I am the host of the Sports Report and the station manager here of Sportswire Radio, and alongside me to speak about all the latest happenings here in the world of sports is Chris Pizzea of the Liftoff Jets Show and the Talking Rivals Show. You can follow the Liftoff Jets and the Talking Rivals anytime on Twitter at Liftoff Jets and Talking Rivals. Billy McInerney, formerly of Elite Sports. You can follow Billy McInerney on Twitter at WMCINE. Patrick Trotty, brand new book out there, of course, also from the Talking Rivals and the Pinstripe Chronicles. Well, sorry, Pinstripe Chronicles. You were on the last show, but Talking Rivals, an esteemed author. You can follow him on Twitter. I meant to say at Patrick Trotty. And the brute force Brad Weiss, who's solo without Jason Getz. I mean, I guess Jason Getz had other things he had to attend to, but you can follow the brute force on Instagram at bweiss20, Twitter Brad Weiss20. Also, he is the legendary SJC Long Island alum from our men's basketball team, head coach from our Plainview JFK Hawks boys JV team. And also, you can follow him as well with the Level Up Basketball Organization on Long Island and the Long Island Nets and the LI Brew Crew. And you can like all the great things we are doing anytime on Facebook at Sportswire Radio, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. You can listen to all of our shows on sportnarium.com/player. And the brute force and I will be back this Monday. We'll be back around 9 o'clock. We will be speaking SJC men's basketball, and we'll be wrapping up the season with our very, very good friend, of course, that is assistant coach Jason Gordieso. A lot to talk about here with the team, and we'll be talking about, obviously, Alec Tabiter and his season that he had being the Skyline Conference Rookie of the Year. We'll be speaking about Spencer Malloy, who was a first team in the Skyline Conference. Also, his birthday just passed recently, so big happy birthday to Big Spence. I was speaking with Spencer a couple of days ago. Also, Matt Hurt, we know, was on the sportsmanship team here in the Skyline Conference. Also, huge congratulations to Mike McSloy on being the Coach of the Year in the Skyline Conference, which, again, I guess I'm going to have to ask Coach Gordieso this question here. And how do you have a Coach of the Year? It clearly should have been Mike McSloy, because they went from 2 wins in the conference to 11 wins in the conference. But we'll be diplomatic on it. And congratulations to Coach McSloy. We'll definitely get into it, I'm sure, with Coach Gordieso and all the great things that the program is doing. Also, Jake Gordiello will talk about, and also, of course, the Hurt brothers and our seniors that graduated. And, of course, if you like what you hear from the SJC Long Island Golden Eagles men's basketball team, please give them a follow anytime on Twitter at SJC_MBB. Also, Instagram, SJCMBB. And we will be back. That's Monday, 9 o'clock Eastern time with Coach Gordieso. So very, very excited about that. I also want to commend the Five Town Sound Athletics program. And, of course, for Greg Drizel, it's Drizel. I was calling him Durzel in the interview yesterday because the athletic director, Matt Gershio, continuously for the past 2.5 years has called him Greg Durzel. So I was actually corrected by Coach Drizel, and I actually was calling him the correct phrase up until the last interview we did, because our athletic director kept telling me it's Durzel, but I kept saying, no, he told me it's Drizel. But it all kidding aside, our interview is now up on YouTube at Sportswire Radio, so go view that. Thank you, Coach Drizel, for your support and the program. We'll be speaking with the Hudson Valley Intercollegiate Athletic Conference Rookie of the Year next week. That is Filip Jagielski, the Polish Prince. So we'll try not to ask him too much on the situation with Ukraine, but we'll stick to more with the Five Town Sound men's basketball team. And, of course, you can follow the Sound on Instagram at 5towns_sound. So a lot going on. Also want to congratulate the women's basketball team. They will be in action this Monday in the Nationals for the USCA tournament. They are the number 9 seed at 7 o'clock Eastern time against Penn State Beaver. I want to thank Anthony Alfaro for coming on the show with us. You can follow the team on Instagram at FTC Women's Basketball. I also want to thank acclaimed filmmaker Heather Quinlan for coming on with us last night. We had a number of mutual connections. And, of course, Ed Hearn came on our show last night. Listen, retired ex-Met legend Ed Hearn comes on our Facebook stream. So clearly we were doing something right. And, of course, Heather and I had a connection because, well, we both know Ed Hearn very well. And I want to thank Heather for the opportunity to speak with her about her documentary, Staten Island Graveyard. Very, very interesting project here. It's actually a underground cemetery, you might want to call it, where it's actually a cemetery full of slaves that a shopping strip was built upon. A very, very sad project, but Heather is working on trying to bring light to it. So thank you, Heather, for your support and friendship. You can follow Heather Quinlan anytime on Instagram at HeatherQ, also Twitter as well. And you can go to heatherq.com for all the information on her project. She also did a podcast on the 86 Mets and interviewed a number of those Mets. So thank you, Heather, for your support and friendship. And we got another half an hour or so talking all things related here to the world of sports with 4 of my guys from Sportswire Radio. That is the Brute Force, Brad Weiss, Patrick Trotty, Billy McInerney, and Chris Bizet. And be that as it may that we are on Tobacco Road Sports Radio, I did want to bring it up because because very quickly we are coming to the conclusion of the college basketball season, and that means actually that is going to be the end, it looks like, for the career of Mike Krzyzewski at Duke. And for some of my college basketball guys, I wanted to get into that. I want to go to the brute force Brad Weiss, who's a coach currently, and give me your thoughts on now that we're going to finally see the end here of Mike Krzyzewski with Duke.
Yeah, it's going to be a really sad day for not only college basketball, but the world of basketball just across the globe. Because Mike Krzyzewski is one of the best coaches in basketball of all time, whether it's on any level. You know, we talk about Greg Popovich in the NBA. I think Mike Krzyzewski, I could argue he's the best coach of, the 2000s. He really has been, a guy who's galvanized not only college players, but NBA players. He's obviously coached Team USA and led them to gold medals in the Olympics. I mean, this guy's a legend. And, everything you hear from him, from former players to people who even just chose Duke as a school to go get their education. Mike Krzyzewski was a factor in why Duke became such a big school, both academically and with sports. He put that school on the map. He was, made basketball what it is today. And he's the example as a coach. And for somebody who's a coach myself, a young coach, Mike Krzyzewski is one of those guys you look at as an example of what you want to be as a coach, because he truly does it in every facet. He does it as a coach with basketball, the ins and outs of basketball. He's a great guy with players off the court. He's a great guy with his quotes. Like, you hear what he has to say, and the things he has to say and the way he says it. He's very educated, very smart, and he's just a guy who you want to model after. So in the end, Mike Krzyzewski, his last home game against North Carolina won't be his last game because they're going to be in the tournament. But, and they have the ACC playoffs, of course. But it'll be his last home game in the regular season against North Carolina. And, that's always interesting for all our listeners with Tobacco Sports Radio. I mean, that's got to be interesting to see, the listenership, who's a Duke fan, who's a North Carolina fan. So some
that's what I was actually told. In fact, Coach Greg Drizel at Five Towns actually told me off the air. He's like, I'm going to call up next week. In fact, that was the other announcement. We're going to have Coach Drizel on next Friday. And he actually told me, I want to specifically talk about Duke and North Carolina. So that's obviously something we'll speak quite a bit with Coach. And Anthony Finkel chimes in and says, Coach K, basketball coaching legend, college and Team USA, steady and consistent. My sister and brother-in-law are both Duke alumni. Go Blue Devils and North Crack-a-Lacka. That reminds me, Anthony, I don't know if you know this, but Steve Saperstein, I think, was in North Carolina. He was at a practice one year when he did summer camp with Michael Jordan, because famously Michael Jordan went to North Carolina. So Big Fink, when you see Steve Saperstein in the streets next time, you need to ride Steve Saperstein about why he was at a summer camp back in 2001 and 2002 at North Carolina with Michael Jordan. So you should have told him he should have been at a camp with Grant Hill and everybody else there at Duke instead of North Carolina. Maybe that's why he would have had a little bit of a better game. So you might want to let Mr. Saperstein know that, Anthony Finkel. But no kidding aside, Mike Krzyzewski, a great, great man, a great basketball legend. I always feel like he looks the same from when I remember him, like 25 years ago. Is it me, or does Mike Krzyzewski still have the same face, the same look? I mean, there's some people that you see him from like a year or two, and they look like 100 years different. But Mike Krzyzewski literally looks the same as like in 1982 to 2022. So he clearly has aged very, very well, if at all. Go ahead, Chris, jump in.
For 47 years. 47 years just coaching. I think that's.
And he started at Army. Was it Army he started at?
Yeah.
And was Bobby Knight? Was he on Bobby Knight's staff? If I'm not mistaken, or he right
so.
after?
Yeah.
Yep.
And in all the years he made it to the tournament, 35 years, he's been to 12 Final Fours and he won 5 championships.
And I'll bet you that Duke, before Mike Krzyzewski, made the NCAA tournament a handful of times.
Yeah.
And I got another Anthony Finkel comment in here. He says, I went to Chris Mullen basketball camp at St. Thomas Aquinas on Flatbush Avenue. For those that are in North Carolina, Chris Mullen, when you think about basketball in Brooklyn, it's him and Bernard King that were pretty much like the gods when it comes to basketball legends. And if you were somebody that grew up in the Marine Park and in Flatlands and Flatbush areas, Chris Mullen was pretty much like everybody and their mother would say, oh, I know Chris Mullen, or I played with Chris Mullen, and of course, Chris Mullen also recently coached at St. John's, the legendary Golden State Warrior, and I guess Indiana Pacer for a couple years. He played well off the bench with the Pacers. And Anthony, go ahead, Brad. Jump in.
I just want to put a fun fact out there. So my former teammate Tom Flynn from Plainview.
Tom Flynn, yeah, big Tom Flynn. Yes, I hope it's a good Tom Flynn. He's a big man.
The reason why I mention it is because I believe Chris Mullen is his uncle or nephew. So uncle, I think. Uncle. So they're related. So they actually know each other because they're families. So Chris Mullen, for Tom, is not only a legend, but also a family member.
And I could see one thing. Tom Flynn is in I always say this, and I think I said this to Tom one time off the air. Tom Flynn looks like he could be like a professional wrestler. So I was happy it was a good Tom Flynn story because this guy is he's got less than 0 body fat. So, I mean, Brad, you might be in shape, but Tom Flynn is in shape that, again, Tom Flynn's the man. That's all I'm going to say. We love Tom Flynn, of course. Also, I guess you could say legendary playing for you, JFK Hawk. But shout out to, of course, Tom Flynn and Chris Mullen, of course, a legend in the game of basketball. And for you, Patrick, I mean, Coach K, I mean, give me your thoughts on obviously his void that he's going to leave behind here after this season.
Yeah, I mean, not only was he consistent, he was consistently great. I mean, it's not like this guy was putting up, 12, 15, 500 record. He was putting up, multiple decades of 20-plus win seasons and even more. And, Chris was talking about all the accomplishments, and Brute Force was talking about, what a way to go out against North Carolina, his arch rival, at home. That should be a really fun environment. It's always a great rivalry. Not much more.
One of the biggest rivalries in sports.
Done it the right way. Yep. I mean, he's winning and he's doing it the right way. And I know that the late Kobe Bryant was actually thinking of going there. If he was going to pick any school, he was going to go to Duke. So, and he's coached, I mean, on Team USA level. He's coached at starting from Army. So he's seen it all.
John Gonzalez chimed in here and said he was with Bobby Knight in Army in 1969. Wow. So that's 53 years then. I mean, that's a long time. I mean, that's certainly quite a journey, and congratulations to him. I mean, Billy, any thoughts on Coach K real quick?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really follow college basketball closely, but certainly, really long career, really successful career, won multiple national championships. Well, he's synonymous with that school as a coach. So certainly, that you accomplished as a coach, you had a great career. Won gold medals with Team USA in the Olympics. So, definitely happy for him. Hope he enjoys his retirement.
Yeah, pretty much safe to say. And I got a comment here from Jason Getz. So I want to get to what Jason Getz comments because for whatever reason, Jason left the stream. Maybe he had technical difficulties. Maybe he had something else to do. But he said he had a great time. He enjoyed it. And I also want everybody to follow Jason Getz on Instagram at jgetz1. That is JGOETZ1. And he asked if he could come back next week. And he said, that's up to the Brute Force. Well, Jason, I'm the station manager. And I'm the guy that's in charge of Sportswire Radio. So I'm going to answer that instead of the Brute Force. So my answer is going to be absolutely. Well, you better make sure at 9:30 next Friday you have nothing to do and that we see you back here on the stream. So that's going to be the answer for the Brute Force. And John Gonzalez chimes in here and says, here's a fun fact. Bill Parcells, Bobby Knight, and Coach K were all at Army in 1969. John, that's a good one. That's probably one of the best ones I've seen you come up with. I mean, that's an interesting one. Bill Parcells, Bobby Knight, and Coach K were all at Army in 1969. Wow, what a small world. I mean,
they all went to school there as students, or they were coaches?
Bobby Knight was the coach. Bobby Knight coached Coach K as a point guard.
Oh, okay.
When he played.
And I'm assuming
coach too.
Bill Parcells was an assistant there?
Yeah, I think so. Coach. That's a small world there. I mean, who would have guessed that one?
Coaches of our lifetime. We're all together.
1969. What a year.
Wow, yeah, it was what a year. Yeah, what do you think about 1969? You had the first Woodstock for the music fans. You had the first Woodstock. The Jets win the Super Bowl, their only championship. The Mets win the World Series. the Knicks start their run for winning a championship. And then you had Bill Parcells, Bobby Knight, and Coach K. And John Gonzalez said they were all coaching an Army. So, yeah, that pretty much confirms what I think Chris had just said there. So those are some great things. And I got to ask it very quickly because we are on Tobacco Sports Radio here. We got another 20 or so minutes, at least for the stream. And I want to ask this for Billy because obviously the Rangers are in a huge fight for the Metro Division between the Pittsburgh Penguins, the Carolina Hurricanes, and his New York Rangers. I mean, Penguins and Carolina play tonight and Rangers get a win. I mean, give me your thoughts on how that three-team race there kind of shakes up. And I'll throw the Capitals in there also as a part of that equation.
So I would say the Hurricanes win the division. I think they're one of the better teams in the NHL. A dark horse team to win the Stanley Cup. I think the Rangers end up with the second seed. I think the Penguins get the third seed, and the Capitals are in the wild card. I don't think the Penguins really have the pieces anymore. I mean, even some of their key pieces of Genny Malkin, Crystal Tang, struggle to stay on the ice now. They get hurt a lot. So I have doubts about the Penguins. I don't think the Rangers really have the depth to win the division this year with the way the Hurricanes are playing. And Frederik Andersen, the Hurricanes goalie, is the only goalie who's playing anywhere near the level Igor Shesterkin is this year.
Oh, listen, Shesterkin should certainly not only get the Vezina, but he could even be an MVP consideration.
I would say he should be the MVP. I mean, without Shesterkin, the Rangers are probably well out of the playoff race.
I definitely think that they wouldn't be in the postseason. I think there's no question following this team they wouldn't be in the postseason.
No, definitely not. He's been incredible. I mean, even the game today, he makes a save against Nico Hischier, and then immediately makes another one on a shot that no goalie should stop. He was like still moving from the first, and he would slid over and make another one. That doesn't happen. Goalies don't make that saves, and he makes them routinely. It's not like some goalies who for example, Philip Grubauer with the Avalanche last year was, playing on a team that was so good and so good.
I know you almost had to say he's right there. Yeah, that was a big talk last year.
But he's not in that. The Rangers are giving up high major chances. The defense is not playing incredibly, especially once you get past, the Ryan Lindgren, Adam Fox pair. They don't stop high major chances.
Their second pair kind of lacks a little bit after that.
Yeah, it's been kind of. I mean, Trouba's they've looked solid at times, but they're good for like one or two just really bad shifts a game. And then the third pair has been just a nightmare of epic proportions. Patrick Nemeth has been brutal. Jared Norty is not an NHL caliber player. Nils Lundqvist couldn't really get into the coaching staff's good graces. Zach Jones has looked good some nights, bad some nights. Libor Hayek, I don't know what he's still doing here. It's, but Shesterkin has played incredibly well on a team that should not be this good. So he definitely should
be. Billy, 35-15-5. After the win tonight, take a step back for a second here. I mean, I thought the Rangers would be in the mix for a postseason spot, but if you would have told me right now the New York Rangers would be in the mix as one of the best teams, not only in the Eastern Conference, but the NHL, I would have said, are you sure?
Especially when you factor in that, they've lost a player, Vitaly Kravtsov, that they had that was probably penciled in by most people to be in the top 9 playing significant minutes.
And Panarin missed time also for this season as well. I mean, there's a lot of guys that missed time on this team.
Stanley Blais, who is kind of a third, fourth liner, he's been hurt most of the year, so that they've been able to get through this and play well. And Artemi Panarin has had a bit of a down year. I mean, he's still on like a 95-point pace, but he's had a down year compared to what he usually does. So they've had, Igor Shesterkin is dragging this team to the playoffs, kicking and screaming the entire way.
Let me ask you a quick question, Rupert, because I've only got a certain amount of time, and I want to work one thought or two on basketball for especially the Tobacco Road audience here. When it comes to the Rangers in Carolina, give me what you think they do at the deadline, because obviously Carolina is right in the mix as well, especially for our Tobacco Road Sports Radio listeners, because I was hearing Desmond Johnson talk about this last week on the air, and of course we'll play their show tomorrow afternoon as well on Sportswire Radio. What do you think the differences might be in what those teams look for at the deadline?
Yeah, so I think the Rangers are probably looking mostly at bringing in like a middle 6 forward, someone who can kind of step in and lengthen the lineup and hopefully,
third liner.
Yeah, or second liner. Hopefully, Artemi Panarin never needs to play with Dryden Hunt again, because that's a travesty. But the Hurricanes are in a tighter spot. They have much, much less salary cap space to work with. I could see them bringing in, maybe a depth player. But they're so strong right now as a roster that, maybe you bring in another defenseman in case they have some injuries. But their roster is so strong that they almost don't need to make any significant moves.
Do you bring a second pair D-man in, maybe just
maybe. Obviously, they have Jacob Slavin as one of the most underrated defensemen in the league. Certainly, you can probably find a better player than, Brendan Smith for your sixth defenseman. But I don't see any big moves that they really need to make. Yeah.
I think that was a shot at the brute force. I think that was.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
But yeah, I think the Hurricanes are looking more probably in like the depth market, second, third pair defenseman, fourth line forward, someone, even just someone that you bring in and you don't play unless there's injuries that can cover you a little bit better. I think that's more the tier they're looking at. I mean, their core of players is so young that it doesn't make sense to trade any of them anyway. So I think they're set up for sustained success right now, really.
Boy, they're going to be a scary team in the postseason. Every time I look at Carolina in the postseason, especially because as an Islanders fan, the way we played them a few years back, I mean, they're just such a scary team. They're so deep. They're fast. They're physical. I mean, they almost take on the identity of their coach, of course, Rod Brindamore. So I would want no part of the Carolina Hurricanes in the postseason. Whoever draws them in the Metro Division, possibly.
That whole Eastern Conference is close. I think the top 7 is separated by 10, 11 points. So it's almost. I don't want to say it's up for grabs, but it's. I mean, any team.
I think. I think Tampa Bay. I think has come back to earth a little bit. It's hard to win another Stanley Cup, especially 3 in a row. I mean, Toronto's right there, but Toronto's always good in the regular season. Don't know what to make of them. I mean, Boston's in the mix. I mean, you would not want to still draw Boston in the first round. You've got the Capitals. They're always in the mix. You've got Pittsburgh, again, which everyone thinks, okay, this is the year Pittsburgh's going to drop off. And they're right there in the Metro Division. You've got Carolina, which, again, we just spoke about. You've got the Rangers, who've been, again, a really, really nice surprise, and obviously credit to them. I mean, the conference is stacked.
Florida.
I mean,
Florida,
who arguably they might be pound for pound the best team in the Eastern Conference in the NHL. I mean, you're talking about 8 teams right now that just far and far away are better than everybody else in that conference. I don't know. I mean, I honestly, listen, I couldn't tell you who would come out of the Eastern Conference, whereas I look at the West, it's a little bit more cut and dry. There's a couple of teams I say, okay. Yeah, and the East, listen, all 8 of those teams could arguably win a couple of series and get hot. I mean, so that's just kind of the interesting thought here. And I do, before I get closing thoughts here, I do want to bring the brute force here because I wanted to get Jason Getz on an NBA thought, but unfortunately, we have to talk a lot about the NFL and Major League Baseball. And Jason, next week, I promise you we'll get you in on the NBA and such. But the brute force, obviously, some things I did want to ask you on the NBA and anything that catches your mind. I figured let me at least expand it more league-wide because I could go and talk about the Knicks all day and the Nets, but we do have listeners out there, especially with Tobacco Road Sports Radio, who might want to hear a little bit more of a well-rounded thought in the NBA from you.
Yeah, absolutely. Plus, we all know I don't want to talk about the Knicks, even though John Gonzalez is poking the bear. Trying to make sure that I do.
Listen, it's good for the audience. It's good for the audience. So fair play to John.
Just for John Gonzalez, I'll say one comment about the Knicks. All right, this is all I'm going to say. And they're currently playing tonight in the first of a 6-game West Coast trip against Phoenix, who's the best team in the West.
But are missing Chris Paul, by the way, who are missing Chris Paul.
On top of that, Tom, Devin Booker's not playing, yet the New York Knicks are losing. So,
they blew a 16-point lead against the Sixers the other night. So it was the 5th game blowing a 16-plus point lead or more.
Listen, the one thing I'm going to say about the Knicks is we're going to be talking next week, Tom, Bryce, and the Knicks are going to be close to 20 games under 500. Yes,
I think the over-under, I got to be honest, because I was hearing a couple of people talk about this on the Fan very quickly. The over-under for the Knicks for the rest of the season is 5 wins after the All-Star break because the schedule's that bad.
Their schedule's extremely difficult, and even the teams, Tom, that you think they should beat, like they have the Portland Trailblazers coming up. They have like the Spurs, like other teams like that on their schedule. Like those teams are not easy for the Knicks to beat because they're not good.
Lead in Portland. They had a double-digit lead going into the fourth quarter.
Don't remind me. All right? but let's just get to Justin Gianelli and Jason Getz's teams, the Brooklyn Nets, because that's one of the biggest stories right now in the NBA. Is where is Ben Simmons? And Ben Simmons right now,
the longest injury in history. I mean, what is his injury now? Like 2 years? Listen, I know wrestlers that had injuries that it came back in a quicker time than he did.
Listen, mental health is a very serious issue. And one of the things that Ben Simmons talked about before he got traded to the Nets was a mental health issue. And I'll give him that. I'm not going to say I'm not one of these guys that doesn't believe him. I do believe him. But ultimately, Tom Bryce, there's a reason why he's not back yet. Everyone's talking about his bad back. Give me a break. He don't got no damn bad back. All right? What the issue is that, Tom Bryce, the Nets have to play Philadelphia in Philadelphia on March 10th. And that's, of course, where Ben Simmons used to play, where the fans hate him, and they're ready to ridicule and kill him when he comes on March 10th. And his mental capacity just can't take it. So the Nets are trying to say he has an injury to try to defend him from having to play in that game. And in the end, it's just not a good look for the Nets. The Nets already have an issue because, of course, the whole thing with New York City's mandate, where they lifted the public mandate where Kyrie can now come in to the arena, but he cannot step on the court and play, which is just absolutely ridiculous, by the way. Absolutely ridiculous. The fact that unvaccinated players from other teams can walk in and play. Unvaccinated fans can now walk in too and sit on the court, but yet Kyrie Irving cannot enter the game. Like it's just crazy. But in the end,
you know what he should do? Do you know what he should do? The brute force. Does anybody remember when Bobby Valentine got kicked out of the Mets Blue Jays game? He should come in with like a Mr. Potato Head, like disguise.
But the crazy part, Tom, is that with the public mandate, he can walk in. He can be on the bench. He could be on the bench.
But yeah, he can buy a front row seat. I mean, listen, he can watch the games. I mean, he can.
It's just ridiculous. But in the end, Tom Bryce, he still can't play in home games for the Nets. And the Nets only have like 6 or 7 games left on the road. Most of them are at the Barclays Center. So with no Kyrie, with Ben Simmons basically sitting out.
Well, Durant came back yesterday, to be fair. Durant did come back.
And yeah, that's the one positive is that Durant did come back. But in the end, I mean, John Gonzalez, I was going to go right to that point. I mean, who won that trade right now between Ben Simmons and James Harden? Oh. It looks obvious at this moment.
Well, if Ben Simmons doesn't come back, yeah, I mean, obviously Philadelphia. I mean, there's no
question.
Right,
I mean, listen, the Nets built some depth. The Nets have some, but James Harden and Joel Embiid look unstoppable. And now I'm not going to yet say anything crazy because, like you said, Tom Bryce, who have the 76ers went against in the last 3 games with James Harden? The Knicks twice. And the Knicks stink. All right, so the fact that they look good against the Knicks, I am not judging that. That's like, judging the worst team basically in any sport going against them. Like, you can't judge based on that, okay? But ultimately, the Brooklyn Nets are a big question mark. Right now, they're actually 500. They're 32-32 in a playing game where, guess what, Tom? This is the craziest part. They're actually right below Toronto right now in the playing game.
So they lost back-to-back earlier this week.
Correct. So if they play Toronto, they would have to go to Canada, and Canada hasn't lifted any mandate. So Kyrie wouldn't be able to play regardless of what we do in New York.
I'm not going to get in trouble with saying anything about the Canadian government because we have worldwide listeners out there, but certainly in Canada, COVID is differently treated than it is here. That's all I'll say.
So in the end, Tom Bryce, the Nets are in big trouble. They need to get their act together. Kyrie needs to find a way to get back on the court. And Ben Simmons, all right. Oh, stop it, John Gonzalez. All right, with Kemba Walker. All right. This guy, and the fact that the New York Knicks have decided to make this decision on Kemba Walker, sitting him out. And by the way, to our Charlotte and North Carolina audience, you guys got to see the best of Kemba Walker. Ever since he left you guys, he's been awful. All right. And him being on the Knicks, stealing our money, basically, while we have decided to bench him the rest of the season. We don't even have a point guard to begin with. You know, we talked weeks ago.
I heard that all during the week on the Fan, where basically people were calling in left and right. They didn't want to talk about the MLB lockout. They wanted to talk about the fact that the Knicks don't have a point guard. Which again,
because it's a topic, and in the end, you know, both teams from New York are just in a bad spot. And the last quick thing I'll say is that I just can't believe how bad the Los Angeles Lakers are. It is embarrassing.
You know, I got to be honest with you, Brad, and maybe Jason will get some thoughts from you next week, because I did announce, Jason, that you're going to come back next week. You're going to come to the Brew Force's house, and if he doesn't let you in, we'll make sure he lets you in. But I'm sick and tired of seeing the Lakers on national television. They're not the NBA champions anymore. How many times do I have to see the Lakers on national television? They stink.
Yeah,
it's like you remember when I was talking about the New Orleans Saints, how we kept seeing the Saints every week on Thursday Night Football and Monday Night Football and Sunday Night Football. Seriously, the Lakers should not be on national TV anymore. I'm sick and tired of TNT, ESPN, ABC showing Laker games. What have we seen?
And the last championship was that Mickey Mouse one, right? That they played in the dome or whatever.
Yeah.
So don't even count.
And listen, Charles Barkley on TNT said it. He's not even mentioning the Lakers anymore on the show. He refers to them as Los Angeles' team because he doesn't have any respect for them.
So, they don't deserve to be mentioned. I'm sick and tired of the Lakers on national TV and even on the radio. Oh, the Lakers, maybe they'll be a championship contender. Have you seen the team?
And the craziest part, Tom, right, is if you watch SportsCenter, what are the first two topics? The Lakers and Aaron Rodgers. Two topics that shouldn't be damn on TV, all right, that we don't need to hear. Okay, so in the end, the Lakers
what do both have in common? They can't win anything.
And here's a question. Who do you think should take the fall for the Lakers season?
Frank Vogel will probably not come back.
Frank Vogel's going to end up getting the fall. It's not his fault. It's LeBron James' fault.
He won't come back. I mean, it's pretty much a foregone conclusion.
It's LeBron James' fault because he was the one that ultimately made the decision to get Westbrook traded to them. And Westbrook, since he's been traded to them, has been an absolute disaster. And all those depth pieces that they had, they traded
Anthony Davis, to me, is another guy. I mean, like, you want to talk about mental health and Ben Simmons? I mean, I forgot what Anthony Davis looks like.
Yeah, and he can't stay on the court. So in the end, it's LeBron James' fault, though, I think, in my opinion. The fact that the Westbrook trade happened, I think, really hurt the Lakers. I think they needed depth over another superstar, and mainly because of Anthony Davis' injury history. And they just decided to go in a way in which looks bad. And in the end, it's not Frank Vogel's fault, but he'll be the one to get fired.
No, I think, listen, with Thibodeau, you can certainly debate, but Frank Vogel, to me, there's no question that after the season that they are going to make a move. And John Gonzalez is very quickly, Warriors are winning the West. I don't know. I kind of like Memphis right now and John Moran. Something tells me with Memphis, I really like how they're playing. I mean,
I guess quickly, Tom, I guess it was short-lived that me and John Gonzalez can agree because that's absolutely false. All right, the Warriors are going to if he's referring to the Warriors winning the West in the playoffs, I'm talking about the standings right now, winning the West during conference. I think Phoenix and Memphis, like you said, are the two favorites. Phoenix, without their players, are still.
I don't even know if Golden State, what are they, 6.5 behind, 6 or 6.5 behind?
Yeah, they've lost a bunch of teams.
Yeah, I think Phoenix will hang on. I think they'll hang on.
I agree.
I don't think it'll be by much, but I think they'll hang on. So that's some of that. So we're about to go off here on Sportswire Radio. If you want to listen to the rest of the show, we'll be on sportnarium.com/player. So I want to thank everybody here. And very quickly, because I've got about 3 minutes, so you got to keep it all quick here. Let me get some closing thoughts, and we'll finish the rest of the show, maybe 20 or 30 minutes or so on sportnarium.com/player. Chris, give me a thought or two real quick. Social media to plug, anything else you want to say before we move on over to the audio only on sportnarium.com/player.
Next week, we're going to be doing on Liftoff Jets. We're going to be talking about we're going to start previewing the draft picks. We're going to be starting with the wide receivers and the tight ends. We're going to do like our top 5 each. Myself, Sharman, and actually Patrick's going to help us out as well.
I heard that at the end of the show this week. I did hear that.
Yeah, so it's always a lot of fun, see how we all rank our players or whatever. So that's going to be fun. And then, of course, talking rivals. We're going to, unfortunately, talk about the lockout again and hopefully some good news maybe. And I think we're going to try to get into some Yankee Red Sox trades in the past, if any of them made a difference or anything like that. So, and we got other stuff coming up. So looking forward to it. But you can catch us at Talking Rivals, at Liftoff Jets, and my Twitter is CP7NY.
I'm looking forward to all that. I mean, Billy, give me some quick closing thoughts and any social media you want to plug here and very quickly.
Yeah, so you can catch me on Twitter at WMCINE. And then, closing thoughts. I hope that everybody except for Robert D. Manfred Jr. has a great weekend. And this weekend, him not, no, but, rest of you have a great weekend.
And John Gonzalez, does the brute force have nukes? Is that why you have your money on the brute force? I don't want to get any further trouble on that, but that was kind of my thought. But maybe I would bet on the brute force if he's got a nuke, unlike Putin, but we'll see. But Patrick, quick thought here or two, social media, anything else, and fire away.
Yeah, it's always great to be on. And on Monday, we got a new Talking Rivals. We'll just be throwing darts at Manfred on the dartboard and just pretty much talking about what's wrong with baseball. Again, it's going to be, hopefully they get their acts together. So there's good news. And you can find me at Patrick Trotty, at Talking Rivals, and that's about it.
All right, very good. It reminds me, for whatever reason, of the Rush song, The Good News First. So hopefully we get the good news first, like the Rush song. So hopefully, certainly, we'll see if Rob Manfred can sing like Geddy Lee. I highly doubt it. But the brute force, very quickly, I've got about 20 seconds. So give me a closing thought, social media, anything else, and I can't thank you enough.
You got it. Instagram at BWeiss20, Twitter at BradWeiss20, and Facebook searching Bradley Weiss. Billy, I couldn't agree with you more. James Dolan could join them. They could both have a bad weekend together because they are perfectly made for each other. So, and for John Gonzalez, I'll have more ammunition for you on sportinarium.com/player. So tune in.
All right. Well, we thank everybody for listening and tuning in here tonight. You can catch us on sportinarium.com/player. I am the host of the Sports Report, also in Tom Bryce. And thank you, everybody, for watching and listening. And we're going to go because I got to go turn the stream off now. Okay.